Chapter 1400. Song Yuanyi's expression was indifferent. Without the slightest hesitation, he shot a bolt of eternal spring stellar energy at the Black Yin ancestor. This was not the first time the two had clashed. The Black Yin ancestor alone would find it difficult to defeat him, so this move was unnecessary. But a moment later, Song Yuanyi grimaced. Swish! Just when the two were about to clash, a tangible stellar energy of the evil path suddenly shot toward Wang Chong, who had been silently observing the battle from the side. The Black Yin ancestor's attack was so terrifying that it could crush even steel. Moreover, while he had used his attack on Song Yuanyi as a cover, his true target was Wang Chong. No one had expected this. Not even the experts of the various sects would believe that someone of the Black Yin ancestor's status would launch a sneak attack. Boom! As the black energy struck the ground, it caused a series of explosions. But Wang Chong had promptly retreated, barely managing to avoid the Black Yin ancestor's attack. As expected, I can't trust a single one of these old foxes. Wang Chong raised his robe and narrowed his eyes at the Black Yin ancestor, a thought flitting through his mind. This trip to the Origin Immortal Mountain was fraught with danger, with both the righteous and evil paths gathered. No one dared to be careless on this occasion. Although Wang Chong was watching the battle, he was also paying close attention to the movements of the Black Yin ancestor and the myriad ghost ancestor. The Black Yin ancestor might have been able to deceive others, but he could not deceive Wang Chong, who was watching the battle in his world of energy. Kid, you're truly lucky. You even managed to survive. Seeing that his plan had been exposed and that Wang Chong had successfully dodged it, the Black Yin ancestor's face twisted in rage and humiliation. Haha, it's not that I'm lucky, but that senior skills are lacking. Why cover up your mistakes in front of so many people? Wang Chong waved his sleeves and smiled. All the other martial artists present were astonished by this scene. In the martial arts world, the Black Yin ancestor was a demon who killed without batting an eyelid. There was no one in the martial arts world who did not fear him. And as one of the 5 titans of the 5 Ancestor Alliance, the Black Yin ancestor could command many evil path martial artists. For someone of his status to pay attention to a nameless nobody with a weak aura was already rather astonishing. Moreover, this nameless pawn dared to rebuke the Black Yin ancestor in front of so many people. Did he not know that if he angered the Black Yin ancestor, no matter where he hid, only death awaited him? Kid, you're courting death. Wang Chong's words caused the Black Yin ancestor's face to turn red and unsightly. To be rebuked by a junior in front of so many people, the Black Yin ancestor could not keep his face. The first time, he had failed at the Jingqi League's base, and the second time, he had lost all face in front of all the righteous and evil martial artists of the world. These 2 points alone had placed Wang Chong on the Black Yin ancestor's kill list. Although he still could not compare to Song Yuanyi and Xie Guangting, it was enough for the Black Yin ancestor to do everything in his power to kill him. Alliance Lord Song, Vice Alliance Lord Xie, I heard that your Jingqi League has a young Master Qingyang. Haha, it just so happens that we also have a young Master Qingyang. At this moment a sinister voice rang out. The myriad ghost ancestor Pale Wanchong stood atop the banner of the 5 Ancestor Alliance, one hand stroking his beard while the other waving his sleeve, a look of derision in his eyes. Young Master Qingyang, come out. The Black Yin ancestor gave a strange laugh and waved behind him. Swoosh. Before the other martial artists could react, the Jingqi League disciples were in an uproar. Song Yuanyi and Xie Guangting glanced at each other, their faces paling. As for Wang Chong, his pupils constricted as he turned to look. How could this be? How could there be such a coincidence? Wang Chong's heart chilled, his eyes turning sharp. Based on what Song Yuan had said, young Master Qingyang was an elusive dragon that almost no one in the martial arts world recognized. This was precisely why Wang Chong had impersonated him. But based on what the myriad ghost ancestor and the Black Yin ancestor were saying, there was another young Master Qingyang here. Regardless of what Song Yuanyi and Xie Guangting were thinking, the Black Yin ancestor's words caused the 5 Ancestor Alliance disciples to part like a wave. An azure-robed young man of 17 or 18 walked out from the back, his face pale and somewhat frail. Behind him was a silver-robed guard, This guard had a thick beard and a sharp and piercing gaze. Most eye-catching of all were his hands, which were so close to his knees. This was an extremely rare sight among martial artists. Wang Chong sensed a vast energy in this guard's body. This energy was extremely sharp and vicious, like a blade that wanted to cleave apart the world, the mountains, the rivers, the sun and the moon. Buzz! At a glance, Wang Chong had an extremely ill foreboding. Cough cough, everyone. This one has never been willing to get involved in the matters of the martial arts world. But I just so happened to be here. I heard that a young master Qingyang had appeared in the northwest, so I came to take a look. Everyone knows that I've never had much of a reputation, so there's nothing to impersonate. But now that something like this has happened, this one had no choice but to come and take a look. With these final words, the frail young man turned his head, his gaze piercing through the void to the nearby Wang Chong behind Song Yuanyi and Xie Guangting. Although this one doesn't care about anything else, when it comes to my reputation, I have to prove that I am me and young Master Qingyang is young Master Qingyang. Haha, when this old man returned yesterday, I just so happened to run into the real young Master Qingyang. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, no one would have believed that someone would impersonate young Master Qingyang and even deceive the heads of the Zhengqi League and Five Ancestor Alliance. Kid, you're quite bold. The Black Yin ancestor's eyes were as sharp as swords as he stared at Wang Chong. In his entire life, the great grandmaster of the mysterious dark sect had never been in such a situation. He had been forced into a panic by a nameless junior, causing a change in his originally assured plan and forcing him to flee. He had left in high spirits and returned in disappointment, even losing an important black general in permanence. This was also the reason why the great grandmaster of the mysterious dark sect had made an exception to target a nameless junior. This kid was a little too arrogant. The Black Yin ancestor and the Zhengqi League lord were both titans of the martial arts world. Yet this brat was so arrogant that he dared to deceive them. He was simply too lawless. The two young Master Qingyang stared at each other from a distance, and all the disciples of the Zhengqi League were dumbfounded, whispering to each other. What's going on here? How could there be two young Master Qingyangs? Just which one is real and which one is fake? Could this be a scheme of the Five Ancestor Alliance? Are we supposed to believe what they say? That shouldn't be the case. Although the Black Yin ancestor is sinister and cunning, he's still someone of status. There's no need for him to lie about such a matter and do something so beneath his status. Moreover, this won't harm our Zhengqi League in the slightest, so why would he do such a thing? The gazes of the crowd shifted back and forth between Wang Chong and that frail young man. It had to be said that the two were rather similar in appearance. Both were dressed in blue robes. Both were 17 or 18 years of age, and both were rather frail. The only difference was that this young Master Qingyang, of the Five Ancestor Alliance, had an extra guard at his side. Don't listen to the nonsense of the Black Yin ancestor and the others. How can we trust the words of these outer disciples of the evil path? Moreover, have you forgotten? Young Master Qingyang saved us. Song Yuan's face was frosty as she spoke up for Wang Chong. She glared at the myriad ghost ancestor and Black Yin ancestor, her face contorted in rage. Old fogies, all of you are young, yet you still dare to do such a thing. If you're not convinced, then come at me openly. You even came up with a fake young Master Qingyang. Utterly shameless. Impudent. Does our young master need to pretend to be someone else? Lady, mind your words. At this moment, the guard behind the young man suddenly spoke up, his face full of anger. Haha, junior sister, do you still not understand? I've said it before, this kid is a fake, a fake. Ji Anda suddenly stepped forward, a smug look on his face. He had originally believed that he had made an error in judgment, but now, he was even more certain that the young man at his side was a fake. What do you mean getting separated from your guard and being pursued? Young Master Qingyang and his guard are inseparable from each other, so there's no way young Master Qingyang would be acting alone. This brat is just a fake. Jiandu, stand down. A harsh roar resounded. This voice was imbued with such majesty that Jiandu couldn't help but tremble. When he came to his senses, he paled as he stared at Song Yuanyi. Alliance Lord, Ji Anda's lips were drained of blood. He didn't dare to believe that in just a few short days, he had completely lost the trust and favor of Jingqi League Lord Song Yuanyi. He was actually protecting an outsider in front of so many people. No matter what the myriad ghost ancestor and Blackine ancestor say, he is young Master Qingyang, an ally of our Jingqi League. The matters of our league cannot be interfered with by others. Song Yuanyi held his hands behind his back as he indifferently said. His eyes were fixed forward, not even glancing at Ji Andu, his expression extremely stern. Ji Anda's eyes were wide open in disbelief. Chapter 1401. Damn thing. Don't let me find your weakness. Otherwise, I'll cut you into 1,000 pieces and make you die without a burial. Ji Anda quickly turned his head and glared viciously at Wang Chong. If not for him, he would never have been reprimanded by the Alliance Lord, and if not for him, he would never have fallen out of favor. No matter what, he would make this brat pay a heavy price. Pei Wanchang Luo Qiyin, just what are you planning by making such a ruckus? Song Yuanyi paid no attention to Ji Andu, his cold and aloof gaze fixed on the myriad ghost ancestor and Blackine ancestor. Haha, it's been a long time since the martial arts world has been this lively. And it's been a long time since this old man has encountered something so interesting. It's rare for two young Master Qingyangs to appear. So how can we not distinguish the real one from the fake? Why don't we let these juniors decide who's real and who's fake, while we seniors watch from the sidelines? In any case, this isn't our first time fighting, so there's no need to rush things. And besides, haha, Song Yuanyi, if your Jingqi League treats a fake young Master Qingyang as the real one in front of all these people, you'll truly become a laughingstock. The myriad ghost ancestor looked down with a smirk on his face, his robes flapping in the wind. Song Yuanyi said nothing, but Vice Alliance Lord Xie Guangting's eyes twitched, and his expression flickered. The myriad ghost ancestor's words were extremely harsh, and the Jingqi League would have no choice but to agree. This brother, since you dared to pretend to be me, I presume that you're not some nameless nobody. What, do you dare to distinguish the real from the fake in front of all these people? The young man clenched his hand into a fist and placed it between his nose and mouth. Straightening his body, he stared at Wang Chong and smirked. He hadn't planned to cause so much trouble on this trip to the northwest, but now that something like this had happened, he had no choice but to stand up and expose this person. He wanted to see just how daring this person was. Should he stop while he was ahead and admit his mistake? Or should he be bold enough to accept his challenge in front of the world? The crowd was abuzz with chatter. They had all come for the Origin Immortal Mountain, but the matter between Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang had attracted their attention. Just like everyone knew, although young Master Qingyang's martial arts were not very high, he was famous in the martial arts world. Not even some of the most eminent grandmasters of the world could compare to him in his understanding of the martial arts path. Who do you think is the real one? How dare you lie to the leader of the Jingqi League and the great ancestor of the mysterious dark sect? If I'm found out, I'll be dead. Haha, there's no need to go through all this trouble. The one who doesn't agree is the fake young Master Qingyang. Pairs of eyes kept glancing back and forth between Wang Chong and the young man in front of him. Two of the four great young masters of Wulin had actually appeared at the same time. This was a rare thing in Wulin. What's wrong with that? At this moment, a voice rang out in everyone's ears. Wang Chong faintly smiled and took a step forward. Wang Chong had never imagined that his trip to the martial arts world would turn out like this. But as the Grand Marshal of the world, Wang Chong had weathered countless storms. So how could he possibly be afraid of this sort of situation? Moreover, Wang Chong could sense that the myriad ghost ancestor, the Blackine ancestor, Xie Guangting, and Sikong Yuanjia were all focused on him. If he made the slightest movement, these people would immediately attack. In the current situation, Wang Chong had no choice but to agree. But Wang Chong was not flustered. In terms of understanding of the martial arts of the world, he was not inferior to anyone. Not even young Master Qingyang was guaranteed to defeat him. Haha, good. It was at this moment that a burst of laughter rang out. The myriad ghost ancestor stood proudly on the banner and lightly waved his hand. Alliance Lord Song, Vice Alliance Lord Xia. Both of you heard that. This matter is getting more and more interesting. How about this? We'll discuss the grudge between the Five Ancestor Alliance and the Jingqi League later. Before that, let's open our eyes and see who the real young Master Qingyang is. Myriad Ghost Ancestor, what do you propose to do? Song Yuanyi sternly said. The Myriad Ghost Ancestor said nothing, only faintly smiled and turned to young Master Qingyang. The latter understood and took 2 steps forward with a smile. Alliance Lord Song, everyone knows that young Master Qingyang is well versed in all martial arts and knows all the martial arts of the world like the back of his hand. Moreover, with just a few words, he can command a martial artist to defeat a stronger opponent. How about this? Let me, and that young Master Qingyang of your Jingqi League, each choose a martial artist to represent us and compete with each other. What do you think? The young man slightly raised his head, his expression brimming with confidence. Young Master Qingyang, what do you think? The young man turned to Wang Chong, his eyes brimming with derision. Not bad. It's very fair. Wang Chong smiled at these words. Very good. Since that's the case, let's do as you say. Song Yuanyi slightly nodded. Since the two had reached an agreement, there was no need for him to stop them. Martial artists that are too strong aren't much of a challenge. Why don't we just choose someone at the profound martial realm? As he spoke, the young man turned to the Black Yin Ancestor and Myriad Ghost Ancestor on the banner. You can choose the disciples of the Five Ancestor Alliance. The Myriad Ghost Ancestor nodded. Haha, there's no need to be polite, young Master Qingyang. Today, all the disciples of the Five Ancestor Alliance are yours to command. I only have one request. Expose that brat for me. I want Song Yuanyi and his Jingqi League to lose face before the entire world. Black Yin Ancestor Luo Qiyin said. Luo Qiyin, you're impudent. Sikong Yuanjia couldn't help but bellow. But Song Yuanyi said nothing. He extended an arm and shook his head, stopping Sikong Yuanjia. Young Master, this alone isn't enough to prove that you are young Master Qingyang. Song Yuanyi suddenly said. Haha, well said. The young man grinned and said, Alliance Lord Song speaks well. Alliance Lord Song speaks well. Thus, I hope that you can pick 3 stronger righteous alliance experts. If I can command this Five Ancestor Alliance disciple to defeat all 3 of them, I will naturally have the right to proceed to the next step. If not, then I am undoubtedly a fake young Master Qingyang, and there is no need to proceed any further. If this is the case, Black Yin Ancestor, I must trouble you to take my life, so that the Five Ancestor Alliance can face the truth. The young man turned to Black Yin Ancestor Luo Qiyin and clasped his hands. Relax, this old man will not be lenient. If that really happens, this old man will make mincemeat out of you. The Black Yin Ancestor cackled. This cackle made everyone's hair stand on end, but the young man seemed unconcerned. As it should be. Wang Chong nodded. He had been coldly watching from the side this entire time, and he inwardly smiled at this sight. In just a few moments, he could tell that this young man was the real young Master Qingyang. His conduct was both righteous and evil, and he was rather similar to Wang Chong's. All was quiet as the dense crowd of martial artists watched. Today's events were far too bizarre. The Jingqi League and the Five Ancestor Alliance had each produced a young Master Qingyang. For one of the leaders of the 4 young masters of the martial arts world to appear, and on the border of the Northwest was far too surprising. Young Master Qingyang quickly chose a disciple from the Five Ancestor Alliance. Alliance Lord Song, I must trouble you to choose 3 opponents for me. Song Yuanyi nodded, and with a flick of his finger, he chose 3 disciples from the Jingqi League. One was at the middle level of the profound martial realm, one was at the upper level of the profound martial realm, and one was at the peak of the profound martial realm. All of them were stronger than the Five Ancestor Alliance disciple. As these 3 Jingqi League disciples appeared, everyone held their breath, and even Wang Chong raised his head to look. Young Master Qingyang faintly smiled as he strode toward the 3 Jingqi League disciples. Alliance Lord Song, there is no need for this disciple. If I'm not wrong, his lesser 3 Yang Meridian has been injured from the Chu Qi all the way to his neck, and it's an extremely tyrannical flame energy. Right now, He can't even raise his arms above his shoulders. In addition, if I'm not wrong, he's still secretly cultivating the 100 Meridian Divine Art. But because he's been too impatient, his Feng Fu point and the governing meridian on his back have been injured, causing his energy to stagnate. These are internal injuries. Although they usually don't show much in battle, when one's energy is pushed to its peak, their stellar energy will immediately fall into disorder. In addition, every night, at the Z period, the Tianshu point on the left side of your abdomen will ache with an intense pain that will wake you from your sleep. This kind of martial artist is already lacking in strength, so how can he be qualified to be challenged? Young Master Qingyang said. Bang! Before anyone else could react, the Zhengqi League expert young Master Qingyang had widened his eyes in shock like he had seen a ghost. Few people knew that he had secretly cultivated the 100 Meridian Divine Art in order to increase his strength, not even the Alliance Lord, but he had failed to hide it from this young man. More importantly, once the 100 Meridian Divine Art was cultivated incorrectly, each person would suffer from completely different symptoms. For this person to even know that his Tianshu point on the left side of his abdomen flared up every night at the Z period was simply inconceivable. Could a person's understanding of martial arts be so profound that they could predict what would happen to their opponent several hours later? This had far surpassed his understanding of the martial path. On the other side, Song Yuani and Xie Guangting said nothing, but a glimmer of light flitted through their eyes. Not even the Five Ancestor Alliance knew that the Zhengqi League had been attacked by the men in black, so there was no way this young man would know. But from what he had just said, he had clearly determined the nature of the martial arts of those men in black, as if he had seen them with his own eyes. This alone showed that he was no simple character. Chapter 1402. The Black Yin Ancestor sinisterly smiled. When he first encountered this pair of master and servant, he had his suspicions, but now that they had revealed their skills, the Black Yin Ancestor was no longer so suspicious. Brat, you're quite bold to dare deceive this ancestor. I'd like to see just who you are. The Black Yin Ancestor inwardly sneered as he stared at Wang Chong. Wang Chong said nothing, but his eyes twitched. This young Master Qingyang truly did have some ability. With just a glance, he had been able to deduce so much information. Not even Wang Chong could do this. But Wang Chong quickly regained his composure and returned to his confident and relaxed demeanor. He and young Master Qingyang had used different methods to instruct each other in martial arts. But in the end, they had reached the same goal. Young Master Qingyang had his own outstanding points, but Wang Chong also had his own points that he could not. Song Yuani said nothing, only waved his hand behind him. The Zhengqi League expert with the hidden injury withdrew and was replaced by another person. Young Master, do you have any questions? Song Yuani looked at the young man. This was the first time he had taken the initiative to speak to young Master Qingyang. None. Then let's begin. Song Yuani indifferently said. Young Master Qingyang neither agreed nor disagreed. He turned to the Five Ancestor Alliance disciple behind him and asked, What martial arts do you know? What kind of martial arts do you know? Show it to me. Yes, young master. The disciple understood and began to demonstrate according to young Master Qingyang's request. He did this very slowly and did not use any stellar energy, but he had only used 20% of his martial arts when he heard a voice at his ear. That's enough. Young Master Qingyang slightly raised his head and indifferently said, In a little while, listen to my orders. In a while, listen to my commands. Do whatever I tell you to do, and use whatever move I tell you to use. Remember, I want you to defeat your first opponent in one move. Hoa! Young Master Qingyang's words sent the crowd into an uproar. The Five Ancestor Alliance disciple glanced at the Black Yin Ancestor and the Myriad Ghost Ancestor, and then at the crowd, his face fraught with unease. But I'm afraid The members of the Five Ancestor Alliance were all disciples of the evil path, all of them eccentric and arrogant. However, no matter how arrogant he was, he understood the gap between him and the other party. He recognized the disciple from the Zhengqi League. His nickname was Five Willow Steps. His speed was exceptionally fast, and his skill was much higher than his. This was not the first time the two had clashed. Due to the relationship between the Five Ancestor Alliance and the Zhengqi League, they had clashed several times. Out of the 10 times he had been injured, 7 or 8 of them had been because of the 5 willow steps. By now, it had left a shadow in his heart, and every time they clashed, Wang Chong would avoid him. In the past, it would have been fine. But now that the 2 old ancestors were watching from above, if he failed, he would probably die. Don't worry, just do as I say. Young Master Qingyang finally opened his eyes and confidently said. Although the 5 Ancestor Alliance disciple was extremely unwilling, with so many people watching, he had no choice but to enter the arena. Let's begin. In the howling wind, countless eyes focused on the pair. Before the appearance of the Origin Immortal Mountain, this was undoubtedly the most interesting sight they had ever seen. Zhao Deong, your legs healed quite quickly. I let you run last time at Mount Wudong, but I'd like to see where you can run this time. 5 Willow Steps sneered. The others could have been ignored, but this Zhao Deong was truly nothing more than a weakling. Young Master Qingyang had chosen a weakling who was completely unworthy of his attention. On the other side, the Evil Path disciple called Zhao Deong had an ashen complexion, but he didn't dare to say anything. The martial arts world paid the most attention to strength. Without strength, words were meaningless. His opponent was stronger than him, so no matter how unwilling he was, he could only accept this result. What's with all the nonsense? Let's begin. The Blackeen ancestor had long since grown impatient from waiting, so he ordered. Swish! The Blackeen ancestor had barely spoken when the expert nicknamed 5 Willow Steps body swayed, leaving behind a blur in the air as he attacked. His speed was extremely fast, and his strength was also great. Moreover, he immediately used his strongest unique skill. 5 steps seeking life. He had clearly heard the conversation between young Master Qingyang and Zhao Deong. 5 Willow Steps was infuriated that young Master Qingyang had told Zhao Deong to finish him off in one move, so he had shown no mercy. The 5 steps seeking life was a unique technique that he had comprehended. There were 5 steps in total, each one superimposed on the other. With each step, the stellar energy in his body would rise to a new level, and when he took the 5th step, his speed and strength would reach the pinnacle, even surpassing his own level of strength. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. When he took the 3rd step, he suddenly heard a young and aloof voice. Now, Kim position little ghost offers his blade. Zhao Deyong's body was already tense, and when he heard this, he instinctively thrust his saber towards the Kim position. Poochie! The sound of the saber and sword piercing into flesh resounded, and hot blood splashed all over his face. Bang! At this moment, there were cries of alarm from all around, as if something inconceivable had occurred. Zhao Deong raised his head and saw that half a foot in front of him, 5 Willow Steps was still gripping his blade with both hands. The blade in Zhao Deong's hand was half buried in the left side of his abdomen, blood gushing out from the wound. His eyes were wide open, his face stricken with shock. Not even in death would he dare to believe that he had been defeated by Zhao Deong, and defeated in one move, using the most ordinary of moves. The little ghost offers his blade. Whether it was on the righteous path or the evil path, this was a technique used by peasants, and could never be put on the stage. How could this be? Seeing this scene, Zhao Deyong was even more shocked than 5 Willow Step. He knew very well in his heart that he really hadn't done anything just now. He had merely followed young Master Qingyang's instructions, and thrust his blade diagonally. But this sort of situation had occurred. This was simply inconceivable. At this moment, Zhao Deong almost subconsciously turned to young Master Qingyang behind him, a look of extreme respect in his eyes. This was simply a celestial being. Stand down. At this moment, Song Yuanyi suddenly spoke up, looking at the Blackeen ancestor. Luo Qiyin, your man has won. Pa. Song Yuanyi flicked his finger, sending 2 bolts of energy flying through the air. The first one snapped Zhao Deyong's blade while the other shot into 5 Willow Step's body to staunch his bleeding and stabilize his condition. Take him away. Song Yuanyi waved his hand, and several experts of the Zhengqi League immediately flew up and left with 5 Willow Steps. At this moment, All the disciples of the Jingqi League were dumbstruck, staring in a daze at the young man across from them. They had originally believed that the Black Yin ancestors' claim that this young man was young Master Qingyang was just nonsense, that the Five Ancestor Alliance was using him to attack the Jingqi League. But now everything was different. To be able to command a low-level profound martial expert, to defeat a middle-level profound martial expert in a single move, this young man displayed abilities similar to those of Wang Chong. A second Jingqi League martial artist quickly stepped onto the stage. This opponent was a high-level profound martial expert, even stronger than 5 willow steps. Imp plucking peaches. Imp offering blade. This time, it was still imp offering blade, but with the addition of imp plucking peaches, the second high-level profound martial expert of the Jingqi League was defeated by a Five Ancestor Alliance disciple. Even as he fell to the ground, his eyes were wide open in disbelief. The atmosphere on the Jingqi League side was oppressive, but the morale of the Five Ancestor Alliance was high. Last one. Song Yuanyi frowned and gestured behind him. Wait a moment. Just when the disciple was about to step forward, young Master Qingyang suddenly spoke. This one has a suggestion. There is no need to go through so much trouble for the last round. Alliance Lord, there is no need to be polite. Just send in an Imperial Martial Expert. Young Master Qingyang said with a relaxed expression. Boom! Young Master Qingyang's words immediately caused a buzz in the crowd, the spectating martial artists all showing looks of shock. Profound Martial Realm against Imperial Martial Realm? What kind of joke is this? If he can do that, then he's truly heaven-defying. Even if others don't believe it, your father will definitely believe that he's young Master Qingyang. Who doesn't know how to brag? Let's just watch. In any case, I will never believe this sort of thing. Let alone the unaffiliated martial artists. Even the Five Ancestor Alliance disciples were dumbfounded. Although the Black Yin ancestor said nothing, he imperceptibly creased his brow. It was clear that not even he had been mentally prepared for young Master Qingyang's request. Alliance Lord, this is definitely the will of the Myriad Ghost Ancestor and the Black Yin ancestor. We can't fall for their trick. Ouyang Changheng suddenly said next to Song Yuanyi. The difference in strength between the two challengers was far too great. He couldn't help but suspect that this was not the young man's idea, but the Five Ancestor Alliances. Agreed to it. To his surprise, Song Yuanyi expressionlessly nodded. Ouyang Changheng was stunned. Although he was startled, no one dared to object to the Alliance Lord's decision. Following young Master Qingyang's orders, the Jingqi Alliance quickly chose an Imperial Martial Expert. The moment this Imperial Martial Expert stepped onto the stage, his body began to exude a storm of energy. Clang, he stomped on the ground, and amidst the sounds of metal clanging, a dark red martial arts halo shot out from his feet like mercury spilling onto the ground. This was followed by a second and a third. In just a few short moments, this Imperial Martial Expert's energy had reached an astonishing level. Even the Five Ancestor Alliance disciple couldn't help but reveal a look of fear. Compared to this Imperial Martial Expert, this disciple's energy was like the light of a firefly. The gap between the two was not just a little. Alliance Lord, do you really need an expert of my level to take action? The moment this Imperial Martial Expert appeared, he immediately turned to Alliance Lord Song Yuanyi, who was standing behind him. A strange smile appeared on his lips, a rather strange expression on his face. Chapter 1403. Song Yuanyi looked forward without turning his head. Do you need me to repeat myself? Yes, Alliance Lord. The Imperial Martial Expert quickly lowered his head and bowed. Straightening his back, he looked at the Evil Path disciple Zhao Deong, a smile on his face like that of a cat toying with a mouse. Haha, since that's the case, I won't be merciful. The mood quickly turned strange, but young Master Qingyang continued to hold his head high, and his expression the same. Begin. With this order, the pair once more stepped onto the battlefield. Zhao Deyong's legs were trembling, and he was about to cry. Although he had successfully defeated two opponents who were stronger than him in the previous two battles, it was completely different this time. He had no chance of winning against an Imperial Martial Expert with the strength of the initial tier of the Profound Martial Realm. If not for the fact that his two ancestors were watching from behind, he would have long since fled. Listen to me. Don't panic. At this moment, a familiar voice rang out in his ear, calm and rational, suffused with a soothing power. It was young Master Qingyang's voice. Upon hearing this familiar voice, the evil path disciple Zhao Deong immediately calmed down. The battle quickly began. Buzz! In a flash, the imperial martial expert reined in all his distracting thoughts. His expression was one of complete focus, and he was putting all his strength into this attack. Although he was much stronger than his foe, as an imperial martial expert, his mind was much firmer, and he would never make the mistake of underestimating his foe. Li position, hungry ghost pounces. Before the imperial martial expert could even move, young Master Qingyang's voice rang out in everyone's ears. While everyone was still wondering what young Master Qingyang was up to, Zhao Deong had already instinctively taken action. Thus, even though he sensed no threat, and there was no one at the Li position, he still lunged to that position. Rumble! Almost at the same time, a huge explosion could be heard, and a powerful force, sharp and fierce, landed heavily on the place where he had been standing a moment ago. Ah! The crowd cried out in alarm. If not for young Master Qingyang's warning, the evil path disciple called Zhao Deong would have been heavily injured. How could this be? The imperial martial disciple was shocked to see that his attack had missed. In all his years in the martial arts world, this was the first time he had encountered something like this. A cripple, who wasn't very strong, had commanded another weakling, who wasn't very strong, to actually defeat him, who was stronger than him. This situation was simply inconceivable. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. On the other side, Zhao Deong noticed this scene, and his entire person was shocked and afraid. He hurriedly pulled away and retreated. However, the imperial martial expert didn't give chase. He was still immersed in his shock. I'd like to see how many of my moves you can dodge. After the initial shock, the imperial martial Jingqi League expert quickly came to his senses. Without the slightest hesitation, he thrust out another palm at Zhao Deong. 5 ghosts carrying the palanquin. Young Master Qingyang's aloof voice rang out once more. Unsurprisingly, stellar energy crashed down, accompanied by an intense explosion and a plume of dust. This attack had once more failed. This guy is not simple. Wang Chong had been standing in the crowd, watching as the battle unfolded. As he watched Zhao Deong dodge the imperial martial expert's attacks twice, Wang Chong vaguely sensed something. To an ordinary person, Zhao Deong had used an extremely dangerous method to dodge the attacks of an imperial martial expert much stronger than himself. But Wang Chong saw something completely different. To easily dodge the attacks of an opponent like young Master Qingyang had commanded Zhao Deong, one needed to predict his opponent's movements. And not just his opponent's, but also Zhao Deong's. When one took into account that young Master Qingyang was just an ordinary martial artist, at most at the true martial realm, this was extremely astonishing. This fellow's calculation abilities have definitely reached an astonishing level. What martial arts that imperial martial expert is going to use, how he is going to use them, and when he is going to strike, he's probably already calculated everything. To be able to do this fellow truly has an astonishing mind. If it weren't for his innate meridians, this fellow would definitely be an expert, and one of those supreme experts. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. He rarely misjudged a person, and this young Master Qingyang was definitely a very difficult expert to deal with. The vast majority of these people were extremely proud, so it was no wonder that he could not tolerate someone pretending to be him. Even when allying with the infamous 5 Ancestor Alliance of the martial arts world, he had no qualms about it. The battle had reached a critical juncture. Zhao Deong was constantly dodging again and again, barely escaping death. Each time, he would draw cries of alarm from the observing crowd. Wang Chong scanned the crowd. Whether it was the myriad ghost ancestor, the Black Yin ancestor, Song Yuanyi, or Xie Guangting, they were all watching this battle. Even Song Yuran and Song Ju were doing the same. The battle is about to end. This imperial martial expert is about to lose, Wang Chong said to himself, after watching for a few moments. He had always been as clear as a mirror. The imperial martial expert seemed to have the upper hand on the surface, but in reality, step by step, he was falling into young Master Qingyang's rhythm. After one move after another, not even he realized that he had lost his initial sharpness and was beginning to become restless. More importantly, as he attacked again and again, his martial arts, techniques, and offensive characteristics, young Master Qingyang had basically grasped everything about him. He simply did not understand that his true enemy was not Zhao Diyong, but that young Master Qingyang who stood on the edge of the battlefield and was in high spirits and focused as he commanded the others, no longer showing any signs of illness. Time slowly passed, and just when the battle was at its most intense, Zhao Diyong, Kim position, Kuan position, Sun position, Zhen position. Little ghost offers the blade, 5 ghosts move the mountain, hungry ghost soars to the heavens, ghostly chi, ghost king goes forth, all ghosts weep, right abdomen tie point. A string of orders suddenly came from the mouth of young Master Qingyang in the rear. Stellar energy roiled through the air, wreaking havoc in the surroundings. The imperial martial expert held the initiative and was practically suppressing Zhao Diyong. But in the next moment, Zhao Diyong, who had been in a passive position, moved like a nimble snake. With a little ghost offering blade, he attacked and dodged, escaping from the imperial martial expert's pursuit. Young Master Qingyang's ability to cultivate the seemingly ordinary little ghost offers the blade to this level had left the Zhengqi League disciples sighing in amazement. If not for the fact that his understanding and mastery of the martial path had reached a superb level, he would never have been able to put on such a display. But this was not the end. Zhao Diyong didn't flee after escaping the imperial martial expert's attack. Instead, he retreated, becoming one with his saber as he charged at the imperial martial expert. 5 ghosts move the mountain, hungry ghost soars to the heavens, ghostly chi, ghost king goes forth, all ghosts weep. A string of techniques was unleashed like lightning bolts. Bum bum bum. The imperial martial expert wasn't idle either. When he saw Zhao Diyong charging at him, he didn't hesitate to unleash several ferocious attacks at Zhao Diyong. His attacks were fast and ruthless, and they also contained destructive power. Even someone of Zhao Diyong's profound martial cultivation would be heavily injured, if not killed. However, something that shocked everyone happened. Once, twice, thrice. In a short period of time, Zhao Diyong seemed to have predicted all of his counterattacks. Every time, he dodged them with a different move. Moreover, every time, he would immediately change his move before he even used it. This was a tacit understanding that he had slowly developed through his cooperation with young Master Qingyang. In an instant, the ordinary moves immediately transformed into something magical, as if it had become another kind of unique skill. He failed once, twice, thrice. In the space of a few short breaths, the imperial martial expert's expression changed again and again. In the end, he lost all his confidence and composure. An imperial martial expert was being toyed around in the palm of a profound martial expert's hand. No one could accept this. Buzz! The moment Zhao Diyong used the 5 Ancestor Alliance's Ghost King's journey, the imperial martial expert's face contorted in fear. Unable to hold on any longer, he began to flee. This time, he was finally afraid. He wasn't afraid of the profound martial realm Zhao Diyong, but of the unfathomable young Master Qingyang behind Zhao Diyong, who could predict his every move. But he had never imagined that even his escape had been part of young Master Qingyang's plan. The moment he fled, Zhao Diyong switched to Ghost's Weep, halfway through the Ghost King's journey, and attacked the Zhengqi League Imperial Martial Expert like a bolt of lightning. Cree! The air boomed like thousands of ghosts weeping. Ah! With a mournful scream, the Imperial Martial Expert who had just flown into the air dropped to the ground, a blade sticking out of his right abdomen. He staggered backward, blood streaming from his wounds. His face was as pale as paper, and his eyes were filled with shock and panic as he stared at Zhao Diyong and young Master Qingyang. This is impossible. His confidence, his power, had been completely shattered at this moment. Hua! After a brief silence, everyone began to seethe with excitement at this sight. They were all dumbfounded and gasping in shock. Heavens! Impossible! This can't be. What did I just see? A martial artist at the initial stage of the profound martial realm was actually able to defeat an imperial martial expert. This is insane. Am I seeing things? Tell me, am I seeing things? Chapter 1404. Putting aside everything else, just this scene alone was enough to show that this azure-robed young man possessed astonishing talent and formidable potential. Even the titans of the martial arts world like them had to treat it with caution. Buzz! In the crowd, Song Yuan and Song Ju clenched their fists, their faces drained of blood. Young Master Qingyang, on the other hand, had a proud expression on his face, exuding a transcendent aura. With this move, he had easily intimidated everyone around him. A moment later, his lips curled into a provocative smile as he turned to Wang Chong in the crowd. Strange things happened every year, but there were especially many this year. Someone had actually tried to impersonate him, but he had truly chosen the wrong person. Was he that easy to impersonate? Truly a fool. For a moment, all was quiet. All eyes quickly noticing young Master Qingyang's movements and turning to Wang Chong. In a flash, all the pressure on the crowd shifted to Wang Chong. Even Song Yuan and Song Ju couldn't help but look over. If one looked carefully, one would notice that their lips were slightly trembling. At the start, the two of them had firmly believed in Wang Chong's identity, but after seeing this sight, they couldn't help but waver. No matter what you say, I believe in what he says. Only he is the true young Master Qingyang. Finally, Song Yuan stepped forward and loudly declared to the crowd. Her face was red with excitement, and it was clear that she was ready to throw caution to the wind. On the side, Wang Chong was both moved and a little ashamed at this sight, but he could only let her down. If his identity was exposed, there was no doubt that Song Yuanyi Xie Guangting, the Black Yin ancestor, and the Myriad Ghost ancestor, 4 experts of the martial arts world, would all attack him. Wang Chong would immediately be surrounded by perils, his life in danger at any moment. The current situation was beyond his control. Little girl, don't blame me. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he quickly calmed down. This was the first time Wang Chong had ever seen a fake Li Kuei meet the real Li Kuei, and after watching 3 matches, Wang Chong had gradually become interested in this young Master Qingyang. What do you think? It's not too late to confess now. Young Master Qingyang took 2 steps forward. Haha. So as long as I command a profound martial realm disciple to defeat an imperial martial realm expert, I'll immediately become young Master Qingyang? To his surprise, Wang Chong faintly smiled and stepped forward. You! Young Master Qingyang instantly felt stifled by Wang Chong's words. Everyone knew that the gap between the imperial martial realm and the profound martial realm was as vast as a chasm, which was why he had commanded an initial-level profound martial expert to defeat an imperial martial expert. But in Wang Chong's mouth, this magnificent feat had been played down like drinking water. How could he possibly accept this? This was a naked humiliation. Then let me see just how much skill you have. Young Master Qingyang angrily said. This matter had already infuriated him, and it was even more absurd than he had imagined. Even in front of the real young Master Qingyang, and after seeing his skills, his opponent was still so calm. This was something he had never imagined. His opponent was either a fool or a madman, but regardless of which it was, he would not permit his opponent to act so impudently in front of him. Alliance Lord Song. Wang Chong nodded at Song Yuanyi, who responded with a slight nod. Only then did Wang Chong turn to the Black Yin ancestor. Black Yin ancestor, there's no need for us to go through so much trouble. Just pick an imperial martial opponent. Bastard thing. The great ancestor of the mysterious dark sect was so angry that his face turned purple. Ghost Owl, you go ahead. The Black Yin ancestor furiously picked out a 5 ancestor alliance expert behind him who exuded a lofty aura. The Righteous Alliance members gasped in alarm at the sight of this martial artist. This isn't fair. The people of the 5 Ancestor Alliance are too shameless. If this is the case, then young Master Qingyang is doomed to lose. They were both opponents, but the Black Yin ancestor had chosen for Wang Chong was much stronger than the others. That's what he said. Isn't Ghost Owl at the Imperial Martial Realm? If he wants to prove himself, I'm confident that this little difficulty won't be able to stop him. The Black Yin ancestor coldly snorted. On the other side, the Zhengqi League disciples were infuriated. But in front of the Black Yin ancestor, they had no choice but to swallow their anger. On the other hand, those unaffiliated martial artists who had come to the northwest to fight for the origin immortal art began to whisper among themselves, all of them rather contemptuous of the Black Yin ancestor's actions. Although Ghost Owl was an imperial martial expert, everyone in the martial arts world knew that he cultivated in a marvelous technique known as the ghost prison art. By relying on this technique, he could endlessly extract all kinds of extremely yin and turbid energy from the depths of the earth. Moreover, once he used his martial arts, a dense ghostly fog would rise up around his body. As long as one entered this range, the stellar energy in one's body would inevitably be disturbed. If even an imperial martial expert could do this, then a profound martial expert could do so. This alone meant that the Zhengqi League had no chance of victory. It seems like the Black Yin ancestor has his eyes on that brat and wants to kill him as quickly as possible. This is why he came up with this method. An idle martial artist who was watching from the side said in a low voice. Black Yin ancestor, since you've already made your choice, there's no need to waste any more time. Let's finish this battle quickly and begin. Wang Chong confidently declared, his hands held behind his back as he looked at the disdainful Black Yin ancestor. Buzz! The Zhengqi League Lord Song Yuani had been prepared to step forward and have the Black Yin ancestor replace Ghost Owl. But upon hearing these words, he couldn't help but frown and swallow back the words that had been on his lips. On the other side, the crowd was stunned, and after a few moments of silence, the several hundred disciples of the Five Ancestor Alliance exploded with laughter. Even young Master Qingyang and the Black Yin ancestor had a mocking smile on their faces. Wang Chang's performance was that of an arrogant and conceited scoundrel. Young Master Qingyang had already reached his limit by commanding an initial-level profound martial expert to defeat an initial-level imperial martial expert. But Wang Chong wanted to choose someone even stronger? Who did he think he was? This scoundrel simply didn't know the immensity of the heavens. And here I thought that he had some sort of skill. But if he wants to learn from me, not just anyone can do it. Young Master Qingyang waved his sleeve and sneered, his entire body relaxing. Young Master has always been unique. This person is nothing more than a clown. An indifferent voice came from behind young Master Qingyang, that high-spirited guard who had been standing guard at his side the entire time. Young Master Qingyang silently smiled. On the other side, the Black Yin ancestor also gave a strange chuckle. This kid's arrogance knew no bounds. He actually wanted to command an ordinary profound martial expert to defeat a top-class imperial martial expert like Ghost Owl. This was simply a joke. Haha kid, if you want to show off, this ancestor will help you. The Black Yin ancestor gave a strange chuckle, and he looked at Wang Chong like he was looking at a dead man. Whether it was true or not, this kid was doomed. Young Master Qingyang, have you gone mad? Why did you agree to this match? Ghost Owl cultivates the ghost prison art and is an extremely powerful martial artist. Moreover, he's always been vicious and merciless, and he's also an extremely experienced fighter. You shouldn't have agreed to this match. Song Yuan rushed up to Wang Chong and tightly gripped his arm. She was about to go crazy from anger at Wang Chong. The Zhengqi League expert that Wang Chong had chosen to fight Ghost Owl was ashen. This was no longer a battle, but a suicide mission. Young Master Qingyang, I know that you're real, but can we switch to someone else for this match? His lips trembled as he spoke. The only reason he had not collapsed was because he had seen Wang Chong command his people to kill Black General Impermanence and force the Black Yin ancestor into submission. But this was different from the previous battles. This was not a battle between groups, but between individuals. The difference was too great, and he had no chance of victory. Relax. I'm here. If the situation doesn't look good, I'll have you concede. Wang Chong patted him on the shoulder and comforted him. Young Master Qingyang, have you gone mad? Do you know what you're saying? Song Yuan was both anxious and angry. This isn't a game. Do you know what will happen if you lose? This was no longer a simple match, and it had nothing to do with this Zhengqi League disciple or ghost owl. It was a matter of whether or not young Master Qingyang was real or fake. If Wang Chong lost, it would prove that Song Yuanyi had been fooled by a fake young Master Qingyang. With so many people watching, even if Song Yuanyi was unwilling, he could only kill Wang Chong to serve as a warning to the rest of the world. But he seemed to be completely unaware of the gravity of this matter, and he was still able to laugh. But Wang Chong seemed not to hear. Instead, he stared at Song Yuan and asked another question. You said just now that Ghost Owl cultivates the ghost prison art. You're still asking me this question at a time like this? Who doesn't know that Ghost Owl cultivates the ghost prison art? Song Yuan was flustered and exasperated. Wang Chong said nothing, but a strange light appeared in his eyes. The ghost prison art? This is going to be fun. Regardless of how angry Song Yuan was, the match quickly began. Listen to me. In a little while, seal the Shaoshang, Shaoyang, and Mingmen acupuncture points. In addition, listen for my orders. Once I tell you to attack, attack immediately. Don't worry about anything else. Wang Chong whispered into the profound martial realm disciple's ear. Chapter 1405. As for safety with Alliance Lord Song here, do you really need to worry about that? The Zhengqi League disciple finally calmed down at Wang Chong's final words, gradually regaining some courage. Although Ghost Owl was formidable, he was on a completely different level from Alliance Lord Song Yuanyi. With the Alliance Lord present, even if the Black Yin sect wanted to kill him, they would find it very difficult to succeed. Young master, be at ease. I will do my best. The Zhengqi League disciple excitedly said. This battle had attracted the attention of countless people. After witnessing the strength of this young Master Qingyang of the Five Ancestor Alliance, they were now rather expectant of this young Master Qingyang of the Zhengqi League. Whether it was real or fake, there was definitely a fake here. Soon, under everyone's gazes, the two of them walked onto the battlefield. The atmosphere was tense, and the battle was on the verge of breaking out. It seems like the one from the Zhengqi League is a fake. I bet that he'll be defeated in 3 moves. 3 moves? Are you crazy? He won't even be able to get 3 feet from Ghost Owl's ghost prison stellar energy before he'll be kneeling on the ground. The crowd whispered to each other, none of them optimistic about Wang Chong's chances. Kill him. As Ghost Owl expressionlessly stepped onto the battlefield, he suddenly heard a soft voice at his ear. Startled, he immediately understood. But a moment later, as he was gathering up stellar energy, there was a flash of light as a distant figure shot toward him. Ghost Owl was stunned for a moment, but he quickly realized that it was that martial artist from the Zhengqi League. That insignificant Xian martial realm warrior actually chose to take the initiative to attack him. He's truly seeking death. Ghost Owl had always had an inflexible and taciturn personality, but even he couldn't help but sneer at this sight. If this fellow had done what Zhao Daong had done, he might have been able to hold on for a little longer, but he had chosen to attack him. This was truly foolish to the extreme, no different from suicide. Ghost Owl's previous plans were no longer necessary. He only needed one move to finish off his opponent. In truth, the crowd reacted exactly as Ghost Owl had expected. Boom! Seeing the Zhengqi League disciple initiate a suicidal attack, the crowd burst into laughter. Is this guy a pig? This is simply throwing an egg at a rock. I overestimated him. You want to defeat Ghost Owl like this? How is that possible? That at this moment, even the lord of the Zhengqi League, Song Yuanyi, couldn't help but frown. He hadn't seen Wang Chong directing the Zhengqi League disciples to attack the Black Yin Great Ancestor with a sword formation, helping the Zhengqi League avert disaster. By the time he arrived, it was already over. He had only heard about it from Ouyang Changheng and the other disciples. Due to his trust in Ouyang Changheng and his many disciples, Song Yuanyi did not doubt this matter. However, Wang Chong's behavior was truly shocking. This was definitely not a wise move. Even Deputy Alliance Master Xia Guangting did not say anything on the surface, but there was a slight ripple in his eyes. In that instant, no one knew what he was thinking. 10 zhang, 8 zhang, 7 zhang, 6 zhang. The distance between the two grew smaller and smaller. Boom! Ghost Owl laughed coldly, and without hesitation, he released the ghost domain stellar energy within his body. Howl! In an instant, thick smoke billowed, and ghostly wails and wolf howls could be heard. Boundless ghost domain stellar energy surged out of Ghost Owl's body, filling the air. This black stellar energy surged like countless evil ghosts struggling in the depths of hell, striking fear into the hearts of onlookers. The battle was about to begin. Everyone could see that the Zhengqi League disciple was on the verge of defeat. Ghost Owl didn't even need to do anything. All he had to do was release his stellar energy and release that thick smoke, and the battle would be over in less than a breath's time. Boom! In a flash, the profound martial realm disciple of the Zhengqi League shot like a shooting star into the ghost domain mist around Ghost Owl. Kree! The moment that Righteous Alliance disciple charged in, there was a howl of stellar energy, and then the air began to tremble. In just a few moments, there was the sound of several collisions of stellar energy. Roar! Before anyone could react, the Righteous Alliance profound martial disciple, who had just charged and staggered back, and landed on the ground, his face ghastly pale as he stared in the direction of Ghost Owl. Did he lose? In an instant, everyone looked in Ghost Owl's direction. At the same time, the Black Yin ancestor and the myriad ghost ancestor slightly curled their fingers, ready to strike at a moment's notice and flick the fake young master Qingyang to death. But a moment later, cries of alarm resounded through the air. Heavens! How could this be? Just what happened just now? Ghost Owl! Ghost Owl actually lost. At that moment, tens of thousands of eyes turned to look at Ghost Owl on the battlefield. He was the victor that everyone thought would be in the bag. However, Ghost Owl had a sword stuck in his chest. Blood flowed like a fountain, and his face was filled with disbelief. The sword had struck a vital point in his chest, and with just that one strike, Ghost Owl was already heavily injured. Impossible! This can't be. On the edge of the battlefield, young Master Qingyang's eyes went wide, his mind in turmoil and his face covered in disbelief. His original indifference, calmness, and confidence were all swept away in an instant. What was left was only a deep shock. Using a profound martial realm cultivator to challenge an imperial martial realm expert was something that even he could only constantly circle around and wear down his opponent's willpower and patience. Afterwards, he could find an opportunity to strike at his opponent's weakness and defeat him in a single blow. But the martial artist Wang Chong had chosen had taken the initiative to attack. This was simply unbelievable. At this moment, apart from a small number of people, no one knew what had just happened. This is... On the other side, Song Yuanyi and Xie Guangting slowly withdrew their gazes from the battlefield, their brows slightly furrowed. The two of them were not as confused as the bystanders. They had clearly seen everything that had happened just now, but it was precisely because of this that they were even more confused. Ghost Owl's ghost prison stellar energy could greatly interfere with martial artists weaker than him, including imperial martial experts of the same level. It could affect the stellar energy in their bodies, causing it to slow down or even stop flowing. But for some reason, the profound martial disciple that Wang Chong had chosen from the Zhengqi League was completely unaffected when he charged in. Not only that, but he had also managed to evade two of Ghost Owl's attacks in an extremely thrilling manner. But when it came to the third attack, for some reason, Ghost Owl's stellar energy suddenly went haywire. His stellar energy clashed, and he was thrown into disarray. The first howl everyone heard was from Ghost Owl in this situation. Soon after, the profound martial disciple from the Zhengqi League struck out with his sword. Given Ghost Owl's powerful cultivation and thick stellar energy, he should have been able to easily block the attack. But for some reason, an opening suddenly appeared in an area that shouldn't have been a problem. The sword in the Zhengqi League disciple's hand passed through the small opening without any resistance and stabbed into his chest. Not many people noticed that Ghost Owl's ghost prison technique had been broken in an instant. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that the profound martial disciple that Wang Chong had chosen had taken the initiative to attack, and even won. A diversion, baiting the enemy, and a pair of eyes that can see through the finest details. He was already defeated from the start. Song Yuani muttered to himself. Song Yuani muttered to himself. He slowly turned his gaze to the nearby Wang Chong, a pensive look in his mind. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, no one would have believed that this youth of 17 or 18 would possess such talent. But there was one thing that Song Yuani didn't understand. Just how had Wang Chong done it? The Five Ancestor Alliance's ghost prison technique was not taught to outsiders. And this technique was so powerful that not even Song Yuani knew what flaws it had. How had Wang Chong seen through this flaw and made Ghost Owl take the bait, causing the stellar energies in his body to clash with each other, and allowing him to lose to a profound martial expert who was far weaker than him? As the wind howled and Wang Chong's robes flapped in the wind, he could sense countless gazes on his body, all of them with different expressions: shock, envy, disbelief, deep jealousy. All these emotions were present, but most of them were deep confusion. Everything had happened far too quickly. Other than Wang Chong, there were very few people who truly understood what had happened. This is called making a mistake, and making a mistake. If it was anyone else, it would have been fine, but the Blackeen ancestor thought himself clever, and actually chose someone who cultivates the ghost prison art. I'll use him to show off my strength. Wang Chong had a relaxed expression on his face as he silently smiled at the Blackeen ancestor. The Blackeen ancestor's complexion had long ago turned ashen. The ghost prison art was renowned throughout the evil path, but Wang Chong had long ago heard from his master that this technique had a massive flaw that wasn't even worth mentioning. This cultivation technique, after using the ghost prison forest, if followed by the ghost prison emptiness, it would immediately cause the astral energy to diverge. The two main meridians in the body that were connected to the arm would conflict with each other and twist together like pythons. At that time, even if Ghost Owl had the strength of an imperial martial expert, his strength would plummet, and he would be left completely defenseless. This was precisely what Wang Chong had had that profound martial disciple of the Jingqi League do. To draw out his ghost prison myriad and ghost prison emptiness, this might seem like a fantasy to others, but to Wang Chong, it was as simple as breathing. Chapter 1406. What are you waiting for? Back down. At this moment a loud roar was heard. The great grandmaster of the mysterious dark sect stood across from him, his face as dark as the bottom of a pot. He was the one who picked Ghost Owl. Now that he had lost, Wang Chong's slap was no different from a slap to his face. All right, young Master Qingyang. As expected of young Master Qingyang. You imposter, why aren't you running away with your tail between your legs? That after a momentary silence, the entire Jingqi League side suddenly erupted into cheers. Earlier, 3 experts of the Jingqi League had been defeated by the Five Ancestor Alliance, and the pressure had made it hard for them to breathe. But revenge did not wait overnight, and they seized this chance to mercilessly ridicule the Five Ancestor Alliance. The Blackeen ancestor's expression turned even more unsightly. Bastard! In the Five Ancestor Alliance, the real young Master Qingyang clenched his fists in his sleeves, his face red with rage. The real young Master Qingyang was clearly here, but the crowd was cheering for this fake, and calling him young Master Qingyang. There was nothing more absurd in the world than this. Young Master, this person is not simple. Suddenly, a voice as soft as the buzz of a mosquito reached his ears. Behind young Master Qingyang, that inseparable bodyguard also spoke up. He furrowed his brows and pressed his right hand on the treasured saber at his waist. Waves of dangerous killing intent leaked out of his body. The meaning of his existence was to protect young Master Qingyang. Anyone who tried to harm him or disrespect him would die. I underestimated him. Young Master Qingyang suppressed his anger and sternly said. He had thought that by following the great ancestor of the mysterious dark sect here, and confronting the impostor face to face, the impostor would surely back off. However, it was obvious that his thinking was too simple. Just based on this move alone, this person was definitely a formidable opponent. He was definitely not a mediocre person like he had imagined. However, the more it was so, the more he would not let him off. In terms of knowledge and understanding of the world's martial arts, he would not lose to anyone. Let me see how long you can keep up your act in front of everyone. A cold light flashed through young Master Qingyang's eyes. Buzz! The crowd around him buzzed with excitement. This conflict involved the Zhengqi League and the Five Ancestor Alliance, and it also involved the illustrious young Master Qingyang of the martial arts world. Everyone had come with the mentality of watching a show, but now, as the plot became more complicated, everyone was unknowingly drawn into it. The talent of these two is simply frightening, but just which one is the real young Master Qingyang? Everyone in the area stared at Wang Chong in the crowd, and then at the young man of the Five Ancestor Alliance, an irrepressible thought emerging in their minds. Blacking Ancestor, you've seen the result. What else do you have to say? Song Yuanyi finally spoke, his face expressionless as he gazed at the Blacking Ancestor. It's not over yet. Song Yuanyi, why are you so anxious? Or are you saying that the Zhengqi League can't afford to lose in front of the world? The Blacking Ancestor chuckled as he goaded Wang Chong. Song Yuanyi neither agreed nor disagreed. Haha, this matter is getting interesting. The Blacking Ancestor gave a strange laugh, a hint of cruelty in his eyes. Now, Alliance Lord Song and I will each choose an imperial martial expert for you. Relax. Neither I nor Alliance Lord Song will try to play any tricks. They will definitely be on the same level of strength. But let me tell you in advance. In the following battles, the one who loses will be the fake young Master Qingyang and will die. Swish. Before Wang Chong could say anything, young Master Qingyang slightly grimaced. The Blacking Ancestor had never said anything to him before. Haha. Everyone in the world knows that young Master Qingyang understands the martial path like the back of his hand. If you instruct your opponent in battle, the one who loses will undoubtedly be the fake. As the Blacking Ancestor spoke, his sinister gaze swept back and forth between Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang. You dare to make a fool out of me and Alliance Lord Song in front of so many people? Do you really think that you can leave alive? Blacking Ancestor, you truly have bad intentions. However, I will not lose. Wang Chong held his hands behind his back and confidently declared. Although young Master Qingyang was a master of all martial arts, Wang Chong had probably seen even more martial arts, though he had not studied them as thoroughly as young Master Qingyang. Moreover, Wang Chong also had the origin of energy, an ability that his master, the evil emperor, had comprehended from the myriad spirit sea art. No matter what kind of opponent he faced, he would be able to discover the crux of their stellar energy flow and find their flaws. In this aspect, Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang were able to achieve the same result through different means. Ha kid, you've got some guts. The Blacking Ancestor revealed a sinister smile, revealing a set of white teeth. Then come. I've always been young Master Qingyang, and no one can impersonate me. Young Master Qingyang had originally been a little hesitant. Although he had a high level of insight, he was not very strong, and he was somewhat apprehensive of a martial arts titan like the Blacking Ancestor. But now that he had been provoked by Wang Chong, he could no longer worry about such things. Haha, good. The Blacking Ancestor laughed heartily at their words. Alliance Lord Song, you have no objections, right? Everything will be done according to Ancestor's plan. Song Yuanyi noncommittally said. Since it had already begun, it had to continue no matter what. The crowd whispered among themselves, their gazes constantly shifting between Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang. I wonder which one of them will win. At this point, everyone was extremely interested in this match. No matter who the fake was, just the fact that he had been able to fight with young Master Qingyang for so long meant that he was no ordinary individual. The Blacking Ancestor and Song Yuanyi quickly chose 2 experts from the Zhengqi League and Five Ancestor Alliance. This time, the 2 of them were extremely fair. Both sides were of the same level of strength, and though they didn't dare to say that they were identical, the gap was so small that it was negligible. Begin. With this order, Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang stepped onto the battlefield. At this moment, the smiles on the faces of all the spectators and the unaffiliated martial artists who had come to watch the show put away their smiles. Everyone was brimming with anticipation for the battle that was about to begin, and the loser would be killed in front of everyone. This was no longer a simple game, and no one could smile. As Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang exchanged blows, the two experts from the Jingqi League and Five Ancestor Alliance also stepped onto the battlefield. You made a mistake. You shouldn't have impersonated me and gotten into the Jingqi League. Not even I can help you now, young Master Qingyang solemnly said to his opponent. Oh, Wang Chong slightly raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise in his eyes. Putting aside everything else, the fact that young Master Qingyang was able to say such words made him feel a little more favorable. Relax. I won't lose. Wang Chong grinned. Truly stubborn. Young Master Qingyang clenched his teeth, his face instantly turning gloomy. Since that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish. The atmosphere suddenly became much tenser. Putting aside Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang, the two experts from the Zhengqi League and Five Ancestor Alliance slowly stepped onto the battlefield. Their gazes were on each other, and they appeared even more nervous than Wang Chong's group. After all, Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang were only talking on the sidelines, but they were truly fighting for their lives. Regardless of the reason, the Zhengqi League and the Five Ancestor Alliance had gathered together was bound to engage in a bloody battle. The battle quickly began, the two sides getting closer and closer. This time, neither Wang Chong nor young Master Qingyang spoke, nor did they offer any pre-battle pointers. In the last round of tests, the two of them had gotten a rough idea of each other's abilities. Given their level of talent, there was no need to make any unnecessary moves. Bang! Just when the spectators still felt that the two of them were a little slow, the two of them attacked at the same time. Stellar energy of extreme yang and evil energy of the evil path of extreme yin and evil collided on the battlefield. Swish! Shockwaves shot out in all directions, leaving deep furrows in the ground. Imperial martial experts were different from profound martial experts, and battles at this level were much more dangerous. Boom boom boom. Before the spectators could react, the two imperial martial experts once more fiercely battled. In just a few short moments, the two of them had used all sorts of strange and dangerous moves, and their movement techniques were also extremely fast. For a moment, the entire battlefield was filled with people, making it difficult to distinguish the two of them. Everyone held their breath, and Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang were even more focused, not letting go of even the slightest movement between the two. This was both a contest between the two of them, and also the first round of the contest between Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang. This round was a test of eyesight. The two of them not only had to analyze the level of strength, martial arts techniques, and fighting style of their opponent, they also had to analyze the flaws, habits, and techniques of their opponent. There was only one chance. Their analysis of the situation between the two martial artists would severely affect the outcome of the battle, and in the end, it would decide whether the two of them lived or died. At some point, it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Gazes were alternating between the two experts, and Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang. Young Master, do your best. In the crowd, Song Yuan and Song Ju clenched their fists, sweating on behalf of Wang Chong. On the other side, Ji Andu had a completely different reaction. A fake who came from who knows where. I'd like to see how you die. Chapter 1407. The two truly do have the same level of strength. This time, the Black Yin ancestor didn't play any tricks. Wang Chong's eyes flashed as he quietly said to himself. But the more this was the case, the more the Black Yin ancestor wanted to kill him. People of the evil path were all vengeful, and a titan of the evil path, like the Black Yin ancestor, had an even higher opinion of himself. Wang Chong was a nobody, but he had ruined his plans in the Jingqi Alliance's stronghold and forced him to flee. This was undoubtedly an affront and humiliation to the Black Yin ancestor. It was like a tiger being touched on the butt, or a dragon being stroked by its whiskers. In the eyes of the Black Yin ancestor, Wang Chong was already a dead man. Bang! In just 3 seconds, there was a massive bang as the two imperial martial experts of the Jingqi Alliance and Five Ancestor Alliance separated and returned to their original positions. The surroundings fell silent once more, but the atmosphere was even more tense than before. The two experts warily eyed each other like cheetahs on the hunt, preparing for the next round of attacks. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Whether it was Wang Chong, young Master Qingyang, or the two evil and righteous experts, none of the four moved. What is this fellow doing? Just when the crowd was gradually growing anxious and losing their patience, the next moment, bang! Without the slightest hesitation, the two of them once again shot forward like rabbits. Dragon form crane image. 10,000 ghosts emerged from the yin. When the two were only a few feet apart and about to clash, Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang's eyes flashed as they spoke at almost the same time. A moment later, the imperial martial expert of the Jingqi Alliance exploded, the image of a dragon and a crane appearing around his body. It circled in the air and swatted at the Five Ancestor Alliance expert from an unexpected direction. But to everyone's disbelief, the Five Ancestor Alliance expert did exactly the same thing as the Jingqi Alliance expert. His body exploded into a plume of smoke as he swung his tail and attacked from the side. The movements of the two were exactly the same. The timing and position of their moves were also exactly the same. It was as if a person was attacking his own shadow. The final result was obvious. Boom, boom, boom. With a series of earth-shattering explosions, the two righteous and evil experts once again collided fiercely. Although the two of them tried their best to defeat their opponent, the result of this round was exactly the same as before. As the two separated, on the edge of the battlefield, Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang both frowned. The two of them had come to the same conclusion in this round, with no clear victor to be decided. Even in the martial arts world, this was an extremely rare sight. The wind howled between the two and made the atmosphere even tenser. At this moment, even the Black Yin ancestor and Song Yuani were unwittingly drawn in. Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang quickly attacked once more. Mountain River Pull. Heavenly Demon Descent. In the battle just now, Wang Chong had determined that the Jingqi Alliance expert and the Five Ancestor Alliance expert had at least 3 powerful techniques. And the Mountain River Pull was a technique that was different from the dragon form crane image. With Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang's words, the battlefield once more changed. Rumble. Stellar energy erupted from the body of the Jingqi Alliance, imperial martial expert, like a volcano. His aura instantly became much heavier, and the image of a mountain appeared in the air around him. However, the peaks and tails of these mountains were upside down, as if all the power of these mountains had been poured into the body of the Jingqi Alliance expert. This mountain river pull was a supreme technique of the Jingqi Alliance that could greatly increase the power of one's attack. But Wang Chong had chosen this technique because of the angle and position from which it could be used. Lingshu Point. Wang Chong's voice rang out in everyone's ears. Indu Point. At almost the same time, young Master Qingyang's voice rang out in everyone's ears. In this round, the two of them chose to take the initiative to attack. Moreover, the positions they chose were precisely the flaws of the two of them. In that short period of time, the two of them had already sensed the flaws of the other party's moves. But now that both of them had found their opponent's openings, the final result was easy to imagine. Bang! Astral chi intersected, and like a bolt of lightning, the powerful force sent the two of them flying. Young Master Qingyang's brow instantly furrowed, as if he had encountered some very difficult problem. Impossible! What's going on here? Young Master Qingyang raised his head and stared at Wang Chong. As a child, he had read extensively and knew all the martial arts of the world like the back of his hand. Those 2 pointers just now had seemed simple, but they had been the culmination of his vast intelligence and comprehension. As the saying went, the slightest error could lead to a difference of 1,000 li. The slightest mistake could lead to a completely different result. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Comprehension ability was like an onion, but it was divided into internal and external levels. Young Master Qingyang had originally believed that he could easily defeat his opponent, but reality had taken a completely different direction. Just who is he? How could there be someone in the world who knows all martial arts like the back of his hand, and has reached the same level of understanding as me? More importantly, How could this person be as young as me? With these final words, young Master Qingyang turned to Wang Chang's young face. Although he found it hard to believe, this fake young Master Qingyang was also 17 or 18 years old. It wasn't impossible for someone to reach the same level as him, but they couldn't be young. For example, Song Yuani or the Black Yin ancestor. Young Master Qingyang would never have believed that there was someone in the world who was so similar to him, so astonishing. At this moment, there was another person who was even more shocked than young Master Qingyang. It was that inseparable bodyguard behind young Master Qingyang. Impossible. Young Master is only so powerful because... Just what is this young man's background? And why is he pretending to be young Master? This tall and sturdy guard had also lost his usual composure. Although the battle had only been going on for a short period of time, and his young master and the young man opposite him had only spoken twice, these 2 times had already caused a huge impact and shock in his heart, as though a mountain had collapsed and the earth had cracked. He had traveled with his young master and seen many experts and magnates, many so-called geniuses and young elites of the martial arts world, each one more eye-catching than the last, but in his mind they were all clowns. In terms of talent, comprehension ability, and understanding of the martial arts path, none of them could compare to his young master. If not for the innate limitations of his body, his young master would have already become famous throughout the world, not one bit inferior to titans of the martial arts world like Song Yuani or the Black Yin ancestor. Demons run amok, mountain river storm, 5 prisons of the demonic path, blazing sun in the sky. As the battle continued, young Master Qingyang did his utmost to command the 5 Ancestor Alliance expert to launch fierce and frenzied attacks at the Jingqi League expert. At this moment, the 5 Ancestor Alliance disciples seemed to have transformed into the sharpest blade, his movements clean and efficient, each attack aimed at his opponent's vitals. One could say that in young Master Qingyang's hands, the 5 Ancestor Alliance expert's strength was maximized. His body changed unpredictably, and every move he made was connected smoothly. It was as if he had calculated the trajectory of countless attacks in advance, and picked the most concise, swift, and lethal one from them. Everyone in the area who saw the 5 Ancestor Alliance experts' performance couldn't help but cry out in alarm. For some reason, this fierce attack made everyone feel like a dagger was pressed against their backs. All of them began to think that if they were the ones going up, they would have long ago been unable to block this attack. This feeling was truly frightening, but even more frightening was Wang Chang's reaction. The 5 Ancestor Alliance expert under young Master Qingyang's control could be described as a saber that could cleave apart anything in its path. The Jingqi League expert under Wang Chang's control was like a sword, skillful and deadly. His movements were nimble, and his reactions extremely fast. Most importantly, in the face of young Master Qingyang's flurry of attacks, Wang Chang not only did not retreat, but also used the same method as young Master Qingyang, using offense as defense. When the two of them used the same method, it was like they were fighting themselves. The final result was hard to tell. Waves of exclamations came from the battlefield. Seeing some thrilling scenes, many of the onlookers couldn't help but cry out. In their hearts, they secretly broke out in a cold sweat for them. Damn it! These 2 fellows are too frightening. Are they really imperial martial cultivators? An unaffiliated martial artist wiped his forehead, his heart drenched in cold sweat. These 2 real and fake young Master Qingyangs were truly too frightening. Under their command, these 2 imperial martial experts were fighting in an extremely dangerous manner. It was like walking on a tightrope. The slightest carelessness would result in a fall into the abyss and a horrible death. Although fire and water could not coexist, and the righteous and evil cultivators would normally engage in a life and death battle when they met on the road, this battle was on a completely different level. At this point in the battle, if one of them relaxed their will and retreated early, they would probably die. But Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang were still at ease. I don't believe it, I can't believe it. Are these really the supreme techniques of our 5 Ancestor Alliance and the Jingqi League? Chapter 1408. On the battlefield, They knew every move that both sides used like the back of their hands. But the same martial arts, the same techniques, in the hands of these two, were as different as the heavens and the earth. It felt like these two were using completely different martial arts. This fellow truly is formidable. At this moment, on the edge of the battlefield, Wang Chong slightly frowned. When Song Yuan had first mentioned young Master Qingyang to him, saying that he was an erudite and well-versed in all martial arts, Wang Chong had been non-committal at the start. But at this point in the battle, Wang Chong had put aside all such thoughts and focused his attention on the battle. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have never believed that such a person existed in the martial arts world. Because Wang Chong had been reincarnated and was a great general who commanded armies on the battlefield, he was able to command that imperial martial expert of the Zhengqi League to display such strength. And young Master Qingyang's martial arts were not very high, only at the true martial realm. For him to be able to command this imperial martial expert to display such strength was truly astonishing. As the battle grew more and more intense, Wang Chong's brow was tightly furrowed and his mind was solemn. But young Master Qingyang's face was pale. Beads of cold sweat began to seep out from his forehead. Gukong Point Demon Sea Layers. Guanyuan Point Myriad Demon Blood Tears. Kuan Point Corpse Mountain Blood Sea. Young Master Qingyang continued to attack, his mind working at top speed, as he tried all sorts of methods to defeat his opponent. But slowly, young Master Qingyang began to lose his composure. That pair of eyes that were always calm and confident also showed a trace of anxiety. This was a powerful foe he had never encountered before. And each attack required extreme calculation and consumption of mental energy. But even so, the two sides were still evenly matched, and it was difficult to determine who was superior. Young Master Qingyang, if you still do not defeat this brat, then according to our agreement, I will believe that you are a fake young Master Qingyang and personally kill you. At this moment, the Blackine ancestor spoke in a sinister voice. The mood instantly grew tense, and young Master Qingyang's eyes widened, his complexion even more unsightly than before. The guard next to young Master Qingyang gripped the hilt of the saber at his waist, his fingers clenching and unclenching. Bastard! He was furious in his heart. However, there was nothing he could do in the face of this famous and powerful patriarch of the wicked path. The great grandmaster of the mysterious dark sect was different from the others. If he acted rashly, and the two sides started fighting, there was an 80% chance that he would die. Despicable! The surrounding crowd inwardly cursed at the Blackine ancestor's words. But this was how the Blackine ancestor had always been, so no one dared to voice their anger. The Blackine ancestor's words immediately caused a subtle shift in the battlefield. The battle between the two imperial martial experts was growing more and more dangerous. The Five Ancestor Alliance expert heard the Blackine ancestor's words and began to attack even more fiercely. Torrential Ghost Flame. Demons wreak havoc. Sacrifice myself to feed the devil. Young Master Qingyang's hands were tightly clenched in his sleeves, and his expression was unprecedentedly focused. I won't lose. I'll never, ever lose to anyone. The long and intense battle had aroused young Master Qingyang's pride and unwillingness to admit defeat. He would never lose to anyone of his age, and no one could defeat him. This was a conviction that he firmly believed in, a source of pride and self-respect. As he stared at the evenly matched righteous and evil experts, young Master Qingyang's eyes flashed with sharpness, and he seemed to make up his mind. Li position. Sacrifice myself to feed the devil. Sun position. Demon rises 10 feet. Ghost Demon Fusion Shenzhong Point. Young Master Qingyang issued 3 orders and named 3 moves. The moment he spoke, the imperial martial expert of the Five Ancestor Alliance immediately reacted. Xiao. His body was like a swimming fish, swaying in the air, quickly attacking, and his speed also increased. Clang. When he was only a few feet from his opponent, the sword in his hand gave off a clear hum and split into 5, unleashing 5 frightening bolts of evil sword chi. This sword chi seemed capable of tearing apart the world, and by relying on this desperate sword chi, young Master Qingyang was finally able to force the Righteous Alliance expert to slightly change his trajectory and restrict his range of movement. Immediately after, the most powerful ghost and demon fusion came one after another. Wang Chong's heart trembled at this sight. The two of them had been fighting for a very long time, and he had to admit that young Master Qingyang truly possessed the most talent he had ever seen. In the battle just now, Wang Chong had tried several times to defeat him, but all his attempts had ended in failure. If this continued, Wang Chong would still have been able to defeat him, but he would have needed to spend some time. But now, young Master Qingyang had used 3 supreme moves, each one of them extremely powerful and threatening to Wang Chong. This had already been demonstrated on the battlefield, but to Wang Chong, he was now closer to success than ever before. Bang! Stellar energy exploded and black smoke roiled. Just when the 5 Ancestor Alliance expert was about to use the 3rd move, Wang Chong's eyes flashed as he gave a command. Li position, sword points to the south mountain. BZZ. Just when the 5 Ancestor Alliance expert was about to unleash the 3rd move, the 5 Ancestor Alliance disciple Wang Chong commanded slid backward like a python. It's useless. You can't escape. On the other side, the atmosphere was tense to the extreme. Young Master Qingyang stared at Wang Chong, a sharp light in his eyes. The final move, Ghost Demon Fusion, was not something that Wang Chong could dodge just by slipping backward. Kree! There was a shrill cry as the 5 Ancestor Alliance expert swung his sword. A savage ghost king and a dreadful demon appeared in the black fog around him. The 2 demons roared and worked with the 5 Ancestor Alliance expert to become one with their swords and charge at the Jingqi League expert with an unstoppable momentum. 4 feet, 3 feet, 2 feet. In a few short moments, the Jingqi League expert was forced into an extremely dangerous position. In the face of this ghost demon fusion, an extremely powerful technique of the 5 Ancestor Alliance, he couldn't help but panic. This kid's going to lose. Many of the Evil Path disciples on the 5 Ancestor Alliance side smiled at this sight. Ha ha ha, if I kill you right now, not even Song Yuani will help you. The Black Yin Ancestor gave a strange chuckle, and a dense stream of Evil Path stellar energy began to gather from his dantian to his right finger. Once the Jingqi League expert was defeated, he would immediately kill Wang Chong. Young Master Qingyang, seeing that Wang Chong was about to be defeated, Song Yuan and Song Ju instantly turned ghastly pale. According to the agreement, if one was defeated, one would die. On the other side, Song Yuani and Xie Guangting's robes began to flap in the wind, but the two of them continued to restrain themselves. On the battlefield, the battle between Wang Chong and young Master Qingyang was about to be decided. 1 foot, 8 inches, 6 inches, time seemed to stop as everyone watched with bated breath. At this point, the battle had lost all its allure. Everyone could already see the Jingqi League expert being defeated, and they could also see Wang Chong being killed. There was no doubt that the one being defeated was the fake young Master Qingyang. Anyone who dared to deceive a martial arts titan, like the Jingqi League Lord, and the Black Yin Ancestor was doomed. But a moment later, everyone was left slack-jawed. Buzz! Without any warning, when the tip of the sword was only several inches from the Imperial Martial Expert, the tip of the 5 Ancestor Alliance expert's sword suddenly stopped, a clear hint of disorder appearing on its surface. Meanwhile, 2 streams of stellar energy fiercely clashed in his body. How could this be? The 5 Ancestor Alliance expert was dumbfounded, a look of disbelief on his face. He had been prepared to welcome the joy of victory, but he had not expected this abrupt change. It would have been fine if it was a normal situation, but in such an intense battle, such conflicts and chaos were extremely fatal. Huh! At the same time, the crowd cried out in alarm. What's going on here? Everyone was dumbfounded by this sight. This change was far too obvious. For an Imperial martial expert to make such a mistake was simply unforgivable. The only person who could maintain their composure at this moment was probably Wang Chong. Now is the time. Wang Chong held his hands behind his back, a sharp light in his eyes. This scene might have been an accident or negligence to others, but it was all within Wang Chong's expectations. Energy rush acupuncture point, immortal shows the way. Boom! There was a heaven-shaking boom, as the Jingqi League disciple reflexively used the technique, that Wang Chong had taught him. After working with Wang Chong for so long, he had grown accustomed to accepting Wang Chong's orders. More importantly, he had no better method. There was a heaven-shaking scream. And before anyone could react, the imperial martial expert of the Five Ancestor Alliance was struck in the Chichong acupuncture point. His body flew like a ragdoll and crashed into the ground, creating a massive crater and sending up a cloud of dust. Silence. Absolute silence. Chapter 1409. How could this be? How could such a thing happen? The Blackeen ancestor's mouth was wide open in disbelief. This was not the result he had hoped for. Impossible. This can't be. How could I lose to him? At this moment, no one was more stunned than young Master Qingyang. A moment ago, he had been confident, relaxed, and in high spirits, even smiling as if he could already see his final victory. But a moment later, he had been defeated. The contrast was so great that young Master Qingyang's eyes instantly lost all light, and even his lips began to tremble. He was young Master Qingyang, and young Master Qingyang was him. In terms of martial arts, no one could compare to him. This was the source of young Master Qingyang's confidence, and it was also why he had dared to seek out the Blackeen ancestor and compete with Wang Chong. Young Master Qingyang had never doubted himself, nor had he ever wondered if he could win, because it was simply impossible for him to lose. But this conclusion was like a fierce slap to the face. Impossible. This can't be. Young Master Qingyang lowered his head and muttered to himself, his entire body in a daze, completely immersed in this massive blow. Ever since he was a child, he had never been able to cultivate martial arts because of his innate constitution. To put it more accurately, he had never been able to achieve much on the martial path. But in terms of vision, experience, and understanding, young Master Qingyang had never believed that he would lose to anyone. He had used a true martial realm cultivation to train a Saint Martial Realm guard, who was not one bit inferior to an imperial great general. This was the source of his confidence, the source of his pride. But now, he had been defeated in the area that he excelled in. For a moment, this was even more unbearable than if he had been killed. Blackeen ancestor, you saw the final result, right? I trust that you have nothing to say. A cold and aloof voice rang out. Zhengqi League Lord Song Yuanyi raised his robe and stepped forward. His gaze immediately locked onto the distant young Master Qingyang. Bastard! In a flash, the Blackeen ancestor's face turned extremely unsightly. Young Master, leave quickly! At this moment, the silent guard behind young Master Qingyang grabbed young Master Qingyang's shoulder and immediately shot away. Humph! Do you think you can leave? With a cold snort, Song Yuanyi's eyes turned like lightning bolts to young Master Qingyang and his bodyguards. As one of the most illustrious martial arts titans of the world, ranking in the top 5, it was impossible for young Master Qingyang and his guard to easily escape from him. Whoosh! The air trembled, emitting a metallic sound. Song Yuanyi immediately leaped out. Seeing this scene, the crowd cried out in surprise, and many people had nervous expressions on their faces. Everything had a price, and at this moment, everyone could already see the fake young Master Qingyang being killed by Zhengqi League Lord Song Yuanyi. Although young Master Qingyang was famous in the martial arts world, and his guard was a top-class expert, he was still one level lower than Zhengqi League Lord Song Yuanyi. Just when young Master Qingyang and his guard were about to be killed by Zhengqi League Lord Song Yuanyi, something completely unexpected happened. Boom! In a flash of light, a steely bolt of eternal spring stellar energy shot through the air. However, its target was not young Master Qingyang and his guard, but the motionless figure standing in front of them. Wang Chong! Father! Alliance Lord! Song Yuran and the other Righteous Alliance disciples were the first to cry out in alarm, all of them dumbfounded. According to the agreement, young Master Qingyang had defeated the young man on the other side, proving his identity. Song Yuanyi had gone to kill the fake young Master Qingyang. So why was he attacking the real young Master Qingyang instead? Wasn't this putting the cart before the horse? Moreover, young Master Qingyang had helped them before. But now, It was an indisputable fact that the Zhengqi League Lord had attacked Wang Chong, and Song Yuani was about to heavily injure Wang Chong. Boom! There was an explosion of energy and dust, and in a flash of light, Wang Chong had flashed several dozen feet away, avoiding Song Yuani's powerful attack. Alliance Lord Song, what are you doing? Wang Chong's clothes flapped in the wind as he stared at Song Yuani, his eyes brimming with shock. At a time like this, you still want to pretend in front of me? Song Yuani held his hands behind his back and indifferently stared at Wang Chong. If you really were young Master Qingyang, you would have never been able to dodge that attack just now. Song Yuani's words immediately caused an uproar. The faces of Song Yuan and Song Ju were devoid of blood, and all the Zhengqi League disciples turned to Wang Chong. Everyone in the world knew that young Master Qingyang did not know martial arts. If Wang Chong really was young Master Qingyang, then he would have never been able to dodge Song Yuani's attack just now. In a flash, the thousands of eyes in the area were staring in absolute silence, all of them dumbfounded. Far too many things had happened in this brief moment, and many people had been unable to react. First, it was the unexpected defeat of the Five Ancestor Alliance's young Master Qingyang. And then, instead of pursuing the fake young Master Qingyang, Zhengqi League Lord Song Yuani, young Master Qingyang. And then the fake became the real and the real became the fake. Some of the people who were too slow to process all this were left dumbfounded. The atmosphere was eerie, and everyone stared at each other, not even daring to breathe too loudly. Everyone understood that something had happened that they did not know about. Even the guard leading young Master Qingyang in the distance had stopped, a look of shock on his face. Young Master, what's going on here? In the crowd, the guard lowered his voice and asked with a puzzled expression. He had intentionally put some distance between the Five Ancestor Alliance and the Zhengqi League. This way, if something unexpected happened, he would be able to escape in time. But from what was happening, it was clear that neither Zhengqi League Lord Song Yuani nor the Black Yin Ancestor had the time to pay attention to them. Ha ha ha, Song Yuani, this old man underestimated you. You've finally come to your senses and know who's real and who's fake. At this moment, a burst of laughter broke the silence. The crowd parted, and the Black Yin Ancestor slowly took 2 steps forward. His eyes quickly turned to Wang Chong. Kid, just who are you? You were able to defeat young Master Qingyang in a martial arts contest, and even dared to deceive me and Alliance Lord Song. Truly audacious. There could never be someone like you in the martial arts world. Speak. Just where did you come from? The Black Yin Ancestor's eyes were like lightning bolts, and as he spoke, he sent a vast psychic energy as heavy as a mountain toward Wang Chong. In the current situation, the slightest strange movement from Wang Chong would be met with a thunderous strike. At almost the same time, Zhengqi League Vice Alliance Lord Xie Guangting and myriad ghost ancestor Pei Wanchang, who had been standing silently on their banners this entire time, turned to look. These 4 titans of the martial arts world were all focused on this unknown young man. This unknown young man had offended 2 titans of the righteous and evil sects at the same time. Such a thing had never happened in the martial arts world before. Just who is this kid? It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. All the spectating unaffiliated martial artists were silent, but none of them said a word. The crowd had originally intended to watch this battle between the real and fake young Master Qingyang, but no one was in the mood to laugh now. He had dared to toy with 2 titans of the martial arts world, and at the same time, he had directly challenged the renowned young Master Qingyang. Although this person was young, his boldness was enough to make even the most arrogant of the martial arts world blush with shame and shock. Haha kid, you're dead for sure. I'd like to see who can save you now. No one was happier than Ji Andu in the crowd. In the end, Song Yuani had chosen not to pursue the fake young Master Qingyang, but to deal with Wang Chong, leaving even Ji Andu dumbfounded. But after his initial shock, he was ecstatic. He had always believed that Wang Chong had fooled Song Yuani, but now, it appeared that Song Yuani had known all along that he wasn't. This old fox. Father, this is impossible. There must be a mistake somewhere. You've definitely made a mistake. At this moment, a woman's voice rang out. Song Yuan ran out of the crowd and hugged her father. Her face was pale, but there was still a hint of hope in her eyes. No matter what, she could not believe that the person who had saved her from Wei Chongting and helped Elder Ouyang and the entire Jingqi League was the fake young master Qingyang. Moreover, even if he's fake, he's never done anything wrong to our Jingqi League. Why would father attack him? Song Yuan raised her head and tightly hugged her father's arm, apparently afraid that Song Yuani would continue to attack Wang Chong. Junior sister, even at a time like this, you still want to speak up for him? Ji Andu cried out in exasperation. Wang Chong ignored Ji Andu, but he couldn't help but sigh. At this point, there was no longer any need to hide anything from Song Yuan. She was a good girl. Even at a time like this, when she had seen him dodge her father's attack, she still firmly believed that he was the real young master Qingyang. In this region, she was probably the only person who trusted him so much. Miss Song, there's no need to speak up for me. I truly am not the real young master Qingyang. Wang Chong loudly said. Everything had an end, and it was time for this trip to the sect to come to an end. Chapter 14:10. A hint of apology flashed through Wang Chong's eyes, but he quickly composed himself and turned to Song Yuani. His expression was indifferent, free and at ease. Even when facing the four titans of the world of sex, he did not show the slightest fear. Alliance Lord Song, I only have one last question. Just where did I reveal a flaw in this match? I asked myself if there was anything out of line in the entire process. Logically speaking, I should have won. So I am the true young master Qingyang. Why did Alliance Lord attack me? The crowd fell deathly still at Wang Chong's nonchalant words. Even at a time like this, Wang Chong was still in the mood to chat and ask where he had revealed a flaw. Even the most arrogant disciples couldn't help but admire him a little at this time. This kid is quite the character. Putting aside everything else, there are few people who can compare to him in terms of bearing. The crowd quietly said to themselves. But soon, everyone's attention was focused on Song Yuani. Correct. This ancestor is now rather curious. Song Yuani, just where did this kid reveal a flaw? Weren't you completely confident in him before? Why did you attack him at the last moment? The Black Yin ancestor spoke up, voicing the question on everyone's mind. You're right, let alone the spectators. Even he wanted to know why Song Yuani had attacked Wang Chong after he had clearly won. The reason for this was like 100 claws scratching at his heart, and he wanted to know the answer. I've never explained things to others, but since you saved Yuan, I'll reluctantly let you die knowing the truth. Song Yuani's expression was indifferent. With a flap of his robe, he took 2 steps forward, his entire body exuding an enormous aura. You truly are very smart, but alas, you've gone too far. If it's just one person, it's nothing much. But if it's 2, 3, then it's not that simple. The first day you appeared on the mountain, you pretended to be young Master Qingyang, but you didn't have that guard with you. This is already suspicious. That night, Jianda filed a complaint against you. During the attack of Dark Night, not only did you do nothing, you even took advantage of the chaos to leave the mountain. Although his conduct was poor, there was no need for him to lie. This is the second point. And the appearance of another young Master Qingyang, from the 5 Ancestor Alliance, is the third point. With these 3 points, no matter what the truth is, you are already worthy of suspicion. Song Yuani's voice reverberated in everyone's ears, and everyone listened attentively. After listening to this explanation, Wang Chong sighed with emotion. As expected, none of these sect giants are simple. Song Yuani had been suspicious for a long time, but he never said a word. Only now did he suddenly make his move. On the night of the attack of the men in black, Song Yuani had already tested him. Wang Chong had believed that the Stone of Destiny's abilities had allowed him to successfully deceive Song Yuani and pass the trial. But only now did Wang Chong realize that Song Yuani's suspicions of him had never diminished. But Song Yuani was far too shrewd to show it. If Wang Chong hadn't been on guard, he would have already fallen for this trick. Alliance Lord Song is truly formidable, as expected of the leader of the righteous path. As these thoughts flitted through his mind, Wang Chong quickly regained his composure. His lips curled into a smile, and he once more assumed the carefree and relaxed image of the young marquis. But even so, it's only suspicious. I wonder how Alliance Lord Song was able to confirm my identity in the end? Could it be that winning is actually wrong? Wang Chong's words immediately caused everyone to perk up their ears and look in Song Yuanyi's direction. That boy was doomed. No one could escape from Song Yuanyi and so many titans of the righteous and evil sections. If that really happened, they would become the laughingstock of the world. What everyone was concerned about was how Song Yuanyi was able to confirm that Wang Chong was not the real young master Qingyang. At this moment, even Ji Anda was looking over. Although he had been scheming against Wang Chong this entire time, and wanted nothing more than to kill him, not even he knew when or how Song Yuanyi had seen through this flaw. Winning naturally wasn't because of a flaw. The flaw was that you performed too excessively. There are times when going too far is as bad as not going far enough. Song Yuanyi's eyes flashed as he calmly spoke. In the final move, when he used Ghost Demon Fusion, and you had Zhou Hongyi use sword points to the South Mountain to retreat, you truly revealed a flaw. For the first time Wang Chong was dumbfounded. Let alone Wang Chong. Even the others were dumbfounded. Even the distant young master Qingyang showed a hint of confusion. Even in his view, Wang Chong's sword points to the South Mountain was just an ordinary exchange of blows. No one understood what Song Yuanyi was talking about. All martial arts are different, but there is also a difference between inside and outside, up and down. The real young master Qingyang is only at the true martial realm. So how could he know the specifics of the imperial martial realm? But you're different. When that imperial martial disciple of the Five Ancestor Alliance used life sacrificing to the demon and demon rises Wen Zhang, you seemed to know that his body had reached its limit in the intense battle, and that the third move, Ghost Demon Fusion, would inevitably overload his body and cause his stellar energy to fall into disorder. Am I wrong? If one hadn't reached the imperial martial realm and had abundant combat experience, they wouldn't have been able to say such a thing. Young Master Qingyang only knew theory, but you knew actual combat. As the saying goes, the slightest difference can lead to a difference of 1,000 li. Is there even a need to say who is real and who is fake? With these final words, Song Yuanyi indifferently glanced at Wang Chong. The battle between the real and fake young master Qingyang had left everyone dazzled and confused, but in Song Yuanyi's mouth, it had been played down. One in theory, one in actual combat, he had instantly determined the real and fake between Wang Chong and young master Qingyang. The crowd buzzed at Song Yuanyi's explanation, and Wang Chong was flabbergasted. He had never imagined that he would lose where he had won. A word of theory and a word of actual combat left Wang Chong speechless, and even young master Qingyang was left speechless. Old ginger is spicier. If Song Yuanyi hadn't mentioned this subtle difference between him and Wang Chong, not even he would have been able to figure it out. So this person is a martial artist with an extremely high cultivation level. This being the case, why did he do this? Young Master Qingyang subconsciously turned to Wang Chong, who was surrounded by the Black Yin ancestor and the other three titans. Although he knew the final answer, he had even more doubts in his heart. Although young Master Qingyang didn't know any martial arts, he had always been extremely conceited through his vast knowledge of martial arts. But in front of Wang Chong, he could no longer muster up any pride. Wang Chong was about the same age as him, but in both martial arts and talent, Wang Chong was above him. This was the first time in his life that he had truly been defeated. Even though Wang Chong had impersonated him, young Master Qingyang didn't hate Wang Chong. On the contrary, he felt a little admiration. Putting aside everything else, Wang Chong had defeated him in a battle of words, and dared to fool titans of the martial arts world like Song Yuanyi and the Black Yin ancestor. No ordinary person could compare to Wang Chong. Alliance Lord Song, this one admires you. To be able to reach Alliance Lord Song's position, you truly are no ordinary individual. But just because I impersonated young Master Qingyang, must this one be put to death? After all, I helped you, didn't I? Wang Chong smirked at Song Yuanyi. He had been worried all this time that his identity would be revealed, and he would be attacked by these titans. But now that things had come to this, he had calmed down. Kiki foul brat at this stage, do you really think you can leave alive? Even if Alliance Lord Song doesn't do anything, this ancestor will still tear you to pieces. The Blackeen ancestor's heart surged with killing intent, his eyes flashing with an extremely dangerous light. If you were just impersonating young Master Qingyang, I could spare your life on account of the fact that you saved Yuran, even if you deceived me. Alas, you are demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu's disciple. Song Yuanyi coldly said. Whoosh. Song Yuanyi's words sent the crowd into an uproar. The pupils of the Blackeen ancestor and the myriad ghost ancestor, who had been standing silently on the banner, suddenly shrank, their expressions changing. Song Yuanyi, are you sure? He is Zhang Wenfu's disciple. The Blackeen ancestor anxiously said as he stared at Song Yuanyi. I wasn't sure before, but there's no doubt about it now. As Song Yuanyi spoke, he waved his hand behind him. Chu Nan, tell everyone what you found. Yes, Alliance Lord. The Jingqi League expert called Chu Nan got down on one knee and bowed before quickly standing up. He put his hand into his sleeve and took out a piece of paper. With a shake of his hand, a figure appeared on the paper. This was an elder who appeared to be 80 or 90 years old. His hair was all white, and he held a striking cane in his hand. Buzz! Wang Chong's heart trembled at this sight. Old village chief. The figure on the Zhengqi League experts' drawing was none other than the old village chief, who had separated from Wang Chong. The Zhengqi League expert was extremely skilled. He had drawn the old village chief in battle, and his expression and demeanor were on point, at least 90% similar to the old village chief. This is the accomplice of the other demonic emperor, Zhang Wenfu, whom we encountered yesterday. He's extremely powerful, and if not for Alliance Lord's timely arrival, many of us would have been injured by him. At the time, an expert of the Jingqi League drew this person. We then sent these drawings to the various regions, using the strength of the Jingqi League to search for information on this accomplice of the demonic emperor. We originally believed that this person had never appeared in the martial arts world and would be very difficult to find. But to our surprise, in the nearby western regions, we were able to quickly find some information. Based on the information we received, this person is the leader of one of the great Tang imperial court's most elite cavalry. Some people call him the Wuxiang village chief, and almost all of that world-shaking Wuxiang cavalry come from his village. Chapter 14:11. For the mighty chief of Wuxiang to appear in the northwest and oppose our Jingqi League, it's hard not to be surprised. We then followed this trail and discovered, to our surprise, that this famous Wuxiang cavalry was actually a young marquis of the Tang dynasty. As Chu Nan spoke, he took out another drawing from his left sleeve and opened it with a swoosh. In an instant, these drawings attracted everyone's attention. Ah! The crowd cried out in alarm at the contents of this drawing. This drawing depicted a handsome youth of 17 or 18, and if one looked carefully, they would realize that this youth was identical to Wang Chong. How could this be? So he really isn't young Master Qingyang. Young Marquis? He's actually Marquis of the Imperial Court. At such a young age, he became Marquis at the age of 18. A look of shock appeared in the eyes of all the people in the surroundings. They had all speculated on Wang Chong's identity. This fellow had dared to toy with Song Yuanyi and the Blackeen ancestor in the palm of his hand. He was simply audacious. But none of them had expected that this person who looked down on the righteous and evil sects was actually a marquis of the Tang dynasty. Ha! As Wang Chong listened to the cries of alarm, he couldn't help but sigh. It seems like today's matter won't end well. Even a wise man would make a mistake. He had never expected that when the chief of Wuxiang had gone to rescue his master, the evil emperor, the news would not be leaked to him, but to the chief of Wuxiang. After the Battle of the Triangular Gap, and the triumphant return from the Battle of Talas, the chief of Wuxiang had been among the Wuxiang cavalry. Many people had seen this at the time, laying the groundwork for his current exposure. Kikik, this ancestor doesn't care if you're Marquis of the Imperial Court or not. Your status in the Imperial Court is useless against us. You dare to fool this ancestor? Today, this ancestor will tear you to pieces. A sinister cackle resounded as the Black Yin ancestor exuded an eerie ghost chi. His pitch-black eyes turned and quickly locked onto Wang Chong, who was 20-some feet away. Ah! Before anyone could react, the Black Yin ancestor leaped into the air like a bird. Wrapped in billowing black smoke, it flew towards Wang Chong at an alarming speed. By the time everyone realized it, they were only 2 steps away from Wang Chong. Buzz! At almost the same time, cries of alarm rang out. Soon after the Black Yin ancestor, the leader of the Zhengqi League, Song Yuani, also attacked. Father! Song Yuan paled and reached out to grab at her father. But how could she possibly catch Song Yuani at her cultivation level? Kill him! Hurry and kill him! Ji Andu excitedly clenched his fists among the Zhengqi League disciples, his eyes brimming with excitement. Song Yuani and the Black Yin ancestor were 2 of the most elite figures of the martial arts world. If the 2 of them attacked, Wang Chong was basically doomed. If not for the presence of these titans, Ji Andu would have already charged forward himself. Bang! But a moment later, there was a heaven-shaking explosion. As everyone watched, a flood of steel, not one bit inferior to the Black Yin ancestors, erupted from Wang Chong's body. This energy was boundless, and the moment it appeared, it swept through the area with unstoppable momentum. Countless martial artists were stunned by this energy. At this moment, besides experts like the Black Yin ancestor and Song Yuani, everyone felt insignificant. Rumble! As the 2 energies collided, the Black Yin ancestor's body swayed, and he was forced back 6 or 7 steps. This is impossible. The Black Yin ancestor's eyes went round, a look of extreme shock on his face. Meanwhile, Wang Chong, who had just pushed back the Black Yin ancestor, had barely had time to catch his breath before his second opponent appeared. Song Yuani's eternal spring stellar energy was as tough as steel. Although it was not as explosive and invasive as the great sundering art, its toughness and repulsive power were unparalleled in the world. Even the black giant formed by the man in black had suffered internal injuries, let alone the others. But a moment later, in a flash of light, the images of a sun and a moon appeared in the air and exploded with destructive energy. Great yin-yang art. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, a gust of wind blew, and a gust of wind overflowed. The instant the phantoms of the sun and moon gathered together, a terrifying force swept out. Song Yuani's eternal spring stellar energy was utterly obliterated and sent flying. Song Yuani's body swayed while Wang Chong's face paled as he retreated 60 to 70 feet. After taking on the attacks of the Black Yin ancestor and Song Yuani, not even someone of Wang Chong's strength had been able to stop them. And the blood in his body continued to surge. Shock. Absolute shock. No one had expected this youth of 18 or 19, who seemed as weak as young Master Qingyang, to suddenly explode with such immense power and take on the attacks of the Black Yin ancestor and Song Yuani. How could this be? How could he have such a high cultivation level? Everyone's face was covered in shock, but no one was more shocked than the distant young Master Qingyang. He had originally believed that Wang Chong was only on par with him in theory, perhaps at most at the Imperial Martial or Saint Martial realm. He had never imagined that though Wang Chong was about the same age as him, his cultivation level was far above his own. He had always prided himself on being a proud son of the heavens, but this was the first time someone had left him in the dust, whether in terms of martial arts comprehension or cultivation level. The young Marquis, he's a member of the Imperial Court. How could there be such a person in the world? Young Master Qingyang muttered to himself, his mind in turmoil. Putting aside the shock of the crowd, the Black Yin ancestor and Song Yuani's attacks had caused the atmosphere in the distance to become extremely tense. Great yin-yang heaven creation art. Song Yuani stood nearby, viciously glaring at Wang Chong, his eyes exuding cold light. Evil creature, I really wasn't wrong about you. You and your master are jackals of the same tribe. Now that you've fallen into my hands, don't even think about leaving alive. It really is the great yin-yang heaven creation art. Little beast, you really are that old scoundrel's disciple. At this moment, no one was more shocked than the Black Yin ancestor. His eyes were filled with shock and anger, mixed with envy and greed. The great yin-yang heaven creation art was the world's #1 evil art. Back then, the Black Yin ancestor had gathered together Song Yuanyi to deal with the demonic emperor Zhang Wenfu precisely for the sake of this art. Once this evil art was cultivated, its power would be immeasurable, and it could be said to be the world's #1 martial arts technique. Alas, the plans of man were no match for the plans of the heavens. In the end, the demonic emperor had still escaped, and all their efforts had been for naught. If the weeds are not cut by the roots, they will grow again with the spring breeze. Now that Zhang Wenfu is nowhere to be seen, capturing you will draw out your master. Brat, if you want to blame someone, blame yourself for taking Zhang Wenfu as your master. At this moment, the myriad ghost ancestor Pei Wanchong, who had been standing under the banner this entire time with a cold expression, finally spoke up. His eyes were cold, and they locked onto Wang Chong like blades. At almost the same time, behind Song Yuanyi, the Jingqi League Vice Lord Xie Guangting stared at Wang Chong as he expressionlessly walked forward. The four titans sandwiched Wang Chong in the middle, killing intent surging in their eyes. The great yin-yang heaven creation art had stirred up a storm of blood in the world, and they had only managed to put an end to it with great difficulty. But after several years, the demonic emperor's bloodline had once more made a comeback and appeared before everyone's eyes. Whether it was Song Yuanyi, Xie Guangting, the myriad ghost ancestor, or the Black Yin ancestor, they were all participants in that major case. Now that someone from the demonic emperor's bloodline had appeared, the four of them could not tolerate him. How could this be? The great yin-yang art, it really is the great yin-yang art. Master really did take another disciple, and he even taught him the great yin-yang art. At the back of the crowd, Ji Anda's face was ashen and savage. The moment Wang Chong erupted with the great yin-yang heaven creation art, Ji Andu had immediately felt an intense reaction. Moreover, the feeling that Wang Chong gave him was that extremely profound and powerful great yin-yang art. Ji Andu couldn't remember how long it had been since he had sensed this familiar and terrifying energy. His heart was filled with fear and hatred, as well as uncontrollable jealousy. Old scoundrel, I've served you for so many years, but you only taught me the little yin-yang art, never willing to teach me the second half. You forced me to take a different path, and ally myself with outsiders to kill you, you old thing. I didn't think that not only did you not die, you even took another disciple after me, and you even taught him the great yin-yang art that you refused to teach me. Infuriating, infuriating. You old fart, I'll definitely tear you to pieces. Intense jealousy caused Ji Anda's face to pale beyond recognition. If looks could kill, Wang Chong would have died countless times over. No matter how much hatred Ji Anda felt, at this moment, the place where Wang Chong and the four titans of the righteous and evil path were standing had become the undisputed center of this region. The atmosphere was tense, and a battle could break out at any moment. The great yin-yang evil art. It's the great yin-yang evil art. Everyone retreat! Retreat! All of a sudden, someone in the crowd screamed in horror. Following that, it was like a stream of scorching lava pouring into a calm lake. The cultivators at the very front were the first to flee, their faces filled with horror. Soon after, the cultivators in the second circle, who were originally gathered to watch the show, fled in a panic. They were afraid that they would be half a step too late. Some people even fell headfirst to the ground. It was like the 17 or 18-year-old youth was the most terrifying primordial beast in the world. The great yin-yang heaven creation art. Chapter 14:12. This was also why, even though Ji Andu had joined the Jingqi League, everyone in the league, except Song Yuanyi, including elders like Sikong Yuanjia and Ouyang Changheng, was extremely wary of Ji Andu. This was because the reputation of this evil art was too great, too terrifying. At demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu's level of cultivation, he didn't even need to touch his opponent. Even from several dozen zhang away, he could suck out the blood and energy in his opponent's body, transforming it into a bloody mist that flowed into his body like rivers flowing into the sea, becoming nourishment for him to replenish his stellar energy and increase his cultivation. Moreover, this evil art was known as the world's #1 group battle technique. The more people there were, the more power it could display. In the martial arts world, assassinations have been launched more than once to kill demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu. Each time, a large number of martial arts experts would be gathered, but in the end, they would be slaughtered by Zhang Wenfu again and again. The more people there were, the stronger he became. It was as if he would never tire, and as if he would never run out of stellar energy. No matter how long the battle went on, Zhang Wenfu could absorb enough energy from his enemies to make up for it. On this side, even a titan like the Lord of the Zhengqi League, Song Yuanyi, and even a supreme technique like the Eternal Spring Stellar Energy, which had a long endurance and could repel an opponent, found it hard to resist. There were countless people in the martial arts world who wanted to kill Zhang Wenfu, but none of them had ever succeeded, not even Song Yuanyi. Walala! The crowd retreated like the tide, as if they were avoiding the plague. In the blink of an eye, a large space had been created around Wang Chong, Song Yuanyi, and the Black Yin Ancestor. Even the disciples of the Zhengqi League and Five Ancestor Alliance felt their hearts thumping in fear. As they stared at the distant Wang Chong, their faces paled, and they began to retreat. "Release me." Song Yuran still did not want to leave, but Ouyang Chongheng grabbed her arm. "Yuran, now is not the time to be willful. That kid was that person's disciple, and no one could save him now. Moreover, the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art was notorious and extremely frightening. It's too dangerous for you to stay here." Just the activation of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art was enough to kill him. "Even I can't bear it, let alone you," Ouyang Chongheng said solemnly. "Elder." Song Yuran was taken aback by these words. Turning to Wang Chong with a complicated expression, she finally allowed Ouyang Chongheng to take her away from the battlefield as really powerful. Anyone who can look down on the world and reach the peak of great general truly isn't easy to deal with. On the other side, in the center of the battlefield, Wang Chong looked at the four giants who had their faces as dark as water. Their powerful auras locked onto him from afar, and his eyes flickered. The Black Yin Ancestors' martial arts were sinister and treacherous, and Song Yuanyi's Eternal Spring mantra was like an endless tide that reflected 30% of his strength back at him. As for the myriad ghost ancestor and Xie Guangting, neither of them was easy to deal with. Wang Chong was also an expert who had fought on the battlefield, but these four titans were even stronger and more skilled in one-on-one combat. Alas, my great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art has gone berserk. Every time I use it, my injuries worsen. Otherwise, I really would have been able to use this once-in-a-lifetime chance to hone my skills and fight with them, Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Fighting on the battlefield was completely different from fighting in the martial arts world. In one-on-one combat, the people of the martial arts world licked blood from the edge of their blades every day, making them far more skilled. Alas, the people of the martial arts world were independent and did not like to be restrained, so they had never been willing to be used by the imperial court. This was something that no one could change. Alliance Lord Song, Black Yin Ancestor, the two of you are quite bold. You clearly know that I am the young Marquis of the imperial court, the newly conferred king of foreign lands, and yet you still dare to try to kill me. Wang Chong composed himself, raised his head to look at Song Yuanyi and the Black Yin Ancestor, and smiled. At that moment, an enormous commander's aura erupted from his body, one that was not one bit inferior to that of Song Yuanyi and the others. Although Wang Chong was only 17 or 18, he had spent many years on the battlefield devising strategies and commanding armies, and he had the bearing of a great general who looked down on the world. Not even Song Yuanyi and the others could compare. As this aura erupted, Wang Chong's body underwent a heaven-toppling transformation. From an unremarkable martial artist, he had grown into an existence that could stand on equal footing with Song Yuanyi and the others. Even the myriad ghost ancestor and Xie Guangting couldn't help but widen their eyes at this sight. This Zhang Wenfu, I truly underestimated him. Everyone had originally believed that it had been quite difficult for Zhang Wenfu to survive all these years, and that returning to his original cultivation was already his limit. This was his new disciple, And no matter how strong he was, there was a limit to his strength. At most, he would be on the same level as Ji Andu. Who could have imagined that his final disciple would be so terrifying? Haha kid. Since you've offended us, just accept your fate. Whether you're a king or a marquis in the imperial court, you're useless here. This ancestor doesn't care who you are. Once you fall into our hands, I'll kill you like a chicken or a dog, without the slightest hesitation. The Black Yin ancestor sinisterly chuckled as he continued to approach. In addition, kid, don't even think about running away. Today the four of us are here. If you still manage to escape, then in the future, all four of our names will be written upside down. You're so young, but you have such a high cultivation level. Moreover, you've cultivated the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art to this level. Just like your master, you've committed countless sins and absorbed the energy of countless people. It's already unpardonable for you to become a disciple of Zhang Wenfu, but you're still so cruel and bloodthirsty. No matter what, I can't let you live. If I don't execute you now, who knows how many more sins you'll commit in the future. Song Yuanyi's robe swayed in the wind, his face cold and emotionless. Like master, like disciple, just accept your fate. Xie Guangting's expression was cold as he spoke. This person will find it very difficult to leave alive. In the distance, young Master Qingyang looked at Wang Chang's back and suddenly said. While everyone else was madly fleeing, young Master Qingyang stood like a rock, his body motionless. Song Yuanyi, Xie Guangting, the Black Yin ancestor, and the myriad ghost ancestor. These four titans of the martial arts world have yet to strike, not because they want to waste words with him, but because they want to prevent him from escaping. The four of them have already made up their minds to keep him here forever. Buzz! The guard was startled by young Master Qingyang's words, and he turned to look at the guard. This time, he saw that Song Yuanyi, Xie Guangting, the Black Yin ancestor, and the myriad ghost ancestor were spread out in four different directions, forming a cage around Wang Chong. This was like an iron cage. As long as Wang Chong took to the air and tried to escape, the four of them would be able to push him back down to the ground. Since ancient times, righteous and evil had always been at odds, and there had never been a time when the Jingqi League and the Five Ancestor Alliance did not fight. Song Yuanyi and the myriad ghost ancestor would also fight whenever they met. The two sides were like fire and water, unable to get along. The last time these irreconcilable titans had worked together was when they had plotted against demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu. If they had not been determined to get rid of Wang Chong, the two sides would never have worked together again. Young Master! The guard turned his head and glanced at young Master Qingyang, apparently sensing something and feeling a little worried. Young Master Qingyang faintly smiled and offered no explanation. For some reason, even though that person had impersonated him and almost died because of him, even though he was that person's disciple, young Master Qingyang could not feel any hatred for him. On the contrary, he felt a little admiration. When someone was around the same level as you, just a little stronger, you would envy them. But if he was so strong that he was miles ahead of you, your jealousy would vanish, and all that would be left would be admiration from the bottom of your heart. Not only had Wang Chong's comprehension of the martial path surpassed his own, even Wang Chong's martial arts were beyond his imagination. Although young Master Qingyang was proud and conceited, even in his normal condition, he had to admit that he would never have been able to reach Wang Chong's level of cultivation at the age of 17 or 18, able to take on the attacks of the Black Yin ancestor and Song Yuanyi in a head-on confrontation. Putting aside everything else, this was enough for him to be proud of. Wang Chong had no idea what young Master Qingyang was thinking. His mind was completely focused on the four titans of the righteous and evil sects. And even though he was in danger, he showed no fear. Black Yin ancestor, Alliance Lord Song, privately attacking an official of the imperial court is punishable by death. I know that your martial arts are formidable, and that you can do whatever you want in the martial arts world, but your Jingqi League and Five Ancestor Alliance must have a stronghold, right? The imperial court has never involved itself in the matters of the martial arts world, but that doesn't mean that it has no way of dealing with the sections. Believe it or not, based on your actions today, this king can mobilize an army with a single order and wipe out all the bandits of the martial arts world. No matter how strong the Jingqi League and Five Ancestor Alliance are, can they stop the army of the imperial court? Wang Chong waved his sleeve and indifferently said, his expression exuding an oppressive majesty and bearing. Wang Chong had calmly and confidently commanded his troops on the battlefield, slaughtering more than 1 million Arabs. As the highest commander of the army, he had always been a man of his word. This sort of bearing was equally effective in front of titans of the martial arts world like Song Yuanyi and the Black Yin ancestor. Before Song Yuanyi could say anything, Black Yin ancestor Luoqin couldn't help but narrow his eyes and grimace. The sects and the imperial court were two different worlds, and the two sides had always minded their own business. If an official of the imperial court angered a member of the sects, the martial artists of the sects would come and go, acting alone and killing off the imperial court official. Not even the authorities would be able to apprehend them. Author's note: what does everyone do when they're relaxing? Recently, I've learned that many authors form groups with their fans to play games, and some even do live streams to interact with readers. Chapter 1413. But even so, no sect could contend against the imperial court in a conflict. Although the people of the sects were powerful and skilled in combat, they were like scattered sand, not skilled in teamwork. For example, the Righteous Alliance was able to create a sword formation with 5 or 6 people, 7 or 8 people, or even 10 people working together. This was already the limit of what the Righteous Alliance could do. But an army was different. In a battle, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of soldiers could work together as one. Moreover, the generals of the army all cultivated war halos, which could further increase the strength of their soldiers, making the army even more powerful. Although a single soldier couldn't compare to a sect martial artist, when tens of thousands of soldiers worked together and used formations to charge forward, no sect would be able to stop them. The Black Yin ancestor and the others once more revealed apprehension. This marquis of the imperial court was not as easy to deal with as they had imagined. True is righteous, evil is evil. Whatever extravagant flowery words you say are useless. Since you dared to cultivate an evil art and kill countless people, only death awaits you. No matter what you say, it's all futile. Song Yuanyi slowly stepped forward, his expression cold and callous. As the master of the Jingqi League, the leader of the righteous path, how could he be threatened by a few words from Wang Chong? Guangting, don't let him escape. I'll personally kill him. Song Yuanyi sneered. Buzz! A thick killing intent flashed through Song Yuanyi's eyes, and a moment later, Song Yuanyi exploded into action. Boom! Thousands of torrents of stellar energy exploded from Song Yuanyi's body. This was the first time since he had arrived in the northwest that Song Yuanyi had pushed his energy to its limit. In just a few seconds, Wang Chong had fallen into an extremely dangerous predicament. The roiling eternal spring stellar energy swept toward Wang Chong like a furious wave. At this moment, even Wang Chong couldn't help but grimace. He originally wanted to use some delaying tactics to stall the 4 of them, but he didn't expect that Song Yuanyi, this big shot of the righteous path, was far more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. He was a man of his word, swift and decisive. Before Wang Chong even had a chance to say a few words, this righteous magnate of the martial arts world had already moved against him. Brat, you can only blame yourself for acknowledging that person as your master. At the same time, a sinister voice sounded. Not far away, the myriad ghost patriarch, Pale Wanchong, also made his move. With a wave of his sleeve, the billowing black fog surged into the sky like a huge wave. Countless ghost soldiers, ghost generals, ghost demons, ghost kings. Tens of thousands of them howled and spun in the air. They immediately covered the sky and the earth with a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. They transformed into an endless torrent of steel that smashed down towards Wang Chong on the ground. The earth trembled as boundless corpse energy, baleful energy, yin energy, and turbid energy surged out from the depths of the earth, under the influence of the myriad ghost ancestors, myriad ghosts worshipping great Yin art. 8 desolations in 6 directions sundering art. The world darkens, all things are evil. At almost the same time, the Zhengqi League Vice Alliance Lord Xie Guangting and the 5 Ancestor Alliance Black Yin Ancestor both bent their fingers like halberds, stellar energy surging out of their bodies like ferocious beasts to hold down Wang Chong and prevent him from escaping. Buzz! The 4 powerful auras were like layers upon layers of mountains, pressing down from the sky. This enormous pressure locked down on Wang Chong, suffocating him. Everyone who saw this scene had a change of expression on their faces. That brat's dead for sure. Countless martial artists stared at Wang Chong's back, the same thought flitting through their minds. No one in the martial arts world could simultaneously block the attacks of these 4. Not even the Black Yin Ancestor. There was no need to mention the others. I can't worry about it anymore. As Wang Chong stared at the streams of energy surging toward him, a thought suddenly flitted through his mind. The great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art had not yet recovered, and his battle with the Black Yin Ancestor and Song Yuanyi had already left Wang Chong with internal injuries. Moreover, the village chief had said that Wang Chong should refrain from using the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art as much as possible. But in this situation, Wang Chong was no longer in control. Bang! His dantian rumbled as majestic stellar energy erupted from Wang Chong's dantian and rushed to his meridians. In an instant, the 2 illusions of the sun and moon reappeared in the air, and a vast aura exploded from Wang Chong's body. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong immediately used the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art. Torrents of stellar energy, sharp and steely, surged out of the air and rumbled into the distance. This was a dispute between the 10 supreme arts of the Central Plains. Any one of the 10 supreme arts of the Central Plains was already so rare that ordinary people would find it difficult to see them. But at this moment, in this treasure trove of the world's #1 art, the supreme and infinite origin immortal art, 3 of these supreme arts had coincidentally appeared at the same time. Boom! The world was silent. It seemed like an unprecedented battle was about to break out. However, at this moment, waves of cries suddenly rang out from the crowd, and their voices were filled with extreme fear. Ah, look over there. The Origin Immortal Mountain, the Origin Immortal Mountain, it's demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu. At the start, Song Yuanyi hadn't cared at all. All his attention had been focused on killing Wang Chong. But when he heard those last words, Song Yuanyi, Xie Guangting, the myriad ghost ancestor, and the Black Yin Ancestor all raised their heads in alarm. Only now did the 4 of them realize that the cries of alarm had not come from them, but from someone else. Following the gaze of the crowd, Song Yuanyi was the first to raise his head and look into the sky. In the sky, there had originally been only a dazzling glow and half of the Origin Immortal Mountain. But at this moment the light and shadow changed. The illusion in midair was like a curtain that was being rolled up, slowly unfolding and expanding. Moreover, the illusion in the sky was becoming more and more solid. It was like an illusory illusion that was coming from another world, from nothingness to reality. Not only that, the earth rumbled and the mountains collapsed. A crack as thin as a strand of hair extended from the sky all the way to the ground. Moreover, it grew thicker as if there was a pair of invisible giant hands pulling at the sides of the crack and pulling it apart from the middle. The Origin Immortal Mountain is about to open. This thought flitted through the minds of Song Yuanyi and the others. But this was not what Song Yuanyi cared about the most. Rather, it was an elder 20 to 30 feet tall, his face cold and aloof, exuding a majestic aura. This elder was dressed in a black robe and had a disdainful gaze. His eyes shone like the sun and moon. Demonic Emperor. Even though Song Yuanyi was the lord of the Zhengqi League, a peak great general existence, and someone who cultivated the immortal universe eternal spring mantra, he couldn't help but grimace at this sight. On the side, when the myriad ghost ancestor Pale Wanchong and the Black Yin ancestor Luo Qin saw this mountainous figure with a sharp gaze, they cried out in alarm. In that instant, the 2 revered leaders of the evil path revealed deep wariness and dread at almost the same time. It could even be described as terror. A person's name was like a tree's shadow. Even after several years, they had still been able to recognize him at a glance. When the demonic emperor ruled over the martial arts world, Pale Wanchong, Luo Qiyin, Song Yuanyi, Xie Guangting, and all the other titans of the righteous and evil path had interacted with the evil emperor. But none of them had ever managed to gain any advantage over the evil emperor. The evil path in particular feared the demonic emperor like a snake or a scorpion, so much so that they paled at the mere mention of his name. At the height of his power, no one in the martial arts world would even dare to say the words demonic emperor or Zhang Wenfu. They would all refer to him as that person, in order to ease the unease in their hearts. Bang! Disregarding the shock in the hearts of the four titans, when the massive phantom of demonic emperor Zhang Wenfu appeared in the air, all the martial artists in the area immediately began to flee in fear. Their hearts were in turmoil. Even now, many years later, their fear of the demonic emperor was so bone deep that it could not be shaken. Run! The demonic emperor has appeared. He's about to start a massacre. Everyone began to flee. Song Yuanyi, Luo Qiyin, you're quite bold. I'd like to see which one of you dares to harm my disciple. In the air, the massive evil emperor Zhang Wenfu's eyes were sharp and thunderous as he stared at Song Yuanyi, Luo Qiyin, Pale Wanchong, and Xie Guangting. As he spoke, spiritual energy gathered in the air, surging out from the depths of the void and transforming into a mountainous azure palm. Like a comet crashing into the earth, it shot toward Song Yuanyi, Luo Qiyin, and the others with astonishing speed. Old demon! Song Yuanyi and the others paled, but on the other end, Wang Chong rejoiced. Master! Wang Chong's lips curled into a smile, and if one looked carefully, one would see that his expression was relaxed, as if he had already expected this. Bang! Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong's stellar energy exploded, coordinating with the evil emperor's, Song Yuanyi's, and Luo Qiyin's stellar energies. With a crack, the earth seemed to crack open. Winds howled and dust billowed dozens of feet into the air. Demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu's attack had been too sudden. Whether it was Song Yuanyi, the Black Yin ancestor, or the myriad ghost ancestor, Pale Wanchong, they were all caught off guard. Don't let that brat get away. Just at this moment, a cold voice rang out. The Vice Alliance Lord of the Zhengqi League, Xie Guangting, who had been acting as a support, suddenly shot out of the fog toward Wang Chong. 8 desolations and 6 directions sundering art. Chapter 14:14. The universe sundering art was the #1 technique in the world, and no powerful defense could be arrogant in front of Xie Guangting. But just as Xie Guangting was about to give chase, Wang Chong's body swayed. Like a falling leaf, he was swept into the air by a violent energy. Xie Guangting only had time to glance at Wang Chong, not even enough time to stop him. In a flash of light, Wang Chong vanished like a popped bubble. Even someone as shrewd as Xie Guangting couldn't help but be taken aback by this sight. He didn't know where to direct his surging stellar energy. It's the seal of the origin Immortal Mountain. Soon, a thought flashed through Xie Guangting's mind, and he immediately understood. Demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu has taken action and swept him into the origin Immortal Mountain. Song Yuanyi stepped forward, his robes fluttering in the wind. Just like Xie Guangting, he solemnly said, "The seal of the origin Immortal Mountain has been completely opened." The seal of the origin Immortal Mountain has been completely opened. As if in response to Song Yuanyi's words, the crack that stretched from the sky to the ground suddenly began to open. Rumble! The world swayed, and the multicolored light and half of the origin Immortal Mountain vanished. In their place were ripples that spread out in all directions. In the center of these ripples, a true black and brown mountain slowly emerged from the massive spatial crack. Everyone couldn't help but have a strange feeling when they saw the towering and precipitous peak that pierced through the sky slowly appear. It was as if the sacred origin Immortal Mountain had always been there. But the spatial folding had also folded the origin Immortal Mountain into the depths of space. Only now did the folded space open, allowing the mysterious origin Immortal Mountain to slowly appear before the eyes of the world. Look over there. All of a sudden someone cried out. A moment later, Countless people saw a massive stone stele erected at the base of the Origin Immortal Mountain. The stone tablet was made of the hardest Xuanwu stone. 2 rows of golden words were carved on it. The treasury of the Origin Immortal Art awaits those destined by fate. The 16 words were extremely eye-catching and clearly entered everyone's eyes. In an instant, the atmosphere of the entire area changed. It's the Origin Immortal Art, the Origin Immortal Art, it's really here. When the unaffiliated cultivators saw the stone stele, their eyes immediately widened. Even their breathing became hurried and disorderly. Even more cultivators had bloodshot eyes, and intense greed appeared on their faces. The supreme and infinite Origin Immortal Art was the strongest martial art of the Central Plains. Anyone in the world who knew of this name knew of its power. Song Yuanyi's Immortal Heaven Earth Eternal Spring mantra was unparalleled in its regenerative ability, recoil ability, and protracted battle prowess. Xie Guangting's 8 Desolation 6 Directions Sundering Art was unparalleled in its offensive power, ability to pierce through stellar energy, and ability to fight head-on. The Myriad Ghost Ancestors' Myriad Ghosts Pilgrimage Great Yin Art, as well as Demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu's Great Yin Heaven Creation Art, were all supreme techniques of this era. Anyone who could learn any one of them would be able to shake the world and become a hegemon that everyone looked up to. But no matter how formidable these arts were, in the end, they would all be eclipsed by the supreme and infinite Origin Immortal Art and be relegated to second place. Of the 10 supreme techniques of the Central Plains, only the supreme and infinite Origin Immortal Art could have the word immortal added to its name. The Origin Immortal Art, the Origin Immortal Art. As long as I can find this art, I can surpass Song Yuanyi, the Black Yin ancestor, and demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu. Haha, once the treasury is open, the world's #1 will be mine. An unaffiliated martial artist muttered to himself as he stared at the Origin Immortal Mountain that had suddenly appeared. He seemed to have gone mad. Whoosh! Before anyone else could react, he shot toward the Origin Immortal Mountain like a bolt of lightning. Whether it was Song Yuanyi, Xie Guangting, or the newly appeared demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu, these were all titans that everyone in the martial arts world feared. But at this moment, the temptation of the world's #1 technique made no one care about Song Yuanyi or demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu. Even if they had to climb a mountain of daggers or a sea of flames, no one would care about it. Anyone who dares to compete with me will have to get out of my way. The first unaffiliated warrior had just rushed up when a long sword, as fast as lightning, pierced towards his heart from the back at an astonishing speed. The unaffiliated martial artist at the very front had no time to react, and the sword immediately pierced through him, killing him. Get out of my way. The Origin Immortal Art is mine. Anyone who blocks my path will die. Whoever obtains the Origin Immortal Art first will be the world's #1 expert. Thousands of martial artists surged toward the Origin Immortal Mountain like a swarm of bees. The crowd instantly fell into a frenzy, and many of the Zhengqi League disciples were alarmed by the sight of their red eyes. In this situation, not even the Zhengqi League dared to stand in their way. Alliance Lord, what do we do? At almost the same time, Xikong Yuanjia, Ouyang Changheng, and the others leaped to Song Yuanyi's side. Although they had come to deal with demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu, the supreme and infinite Origin Immortal Art was also one of the Zhengqi League's goals. The Great Yin Heaven Creation Art has an innately massive flaw that can only be made up for with the Origin Immortal Art. Based on the situation just now, Zhang Wenfu has probably already entered the Origin Immortal Mountain. If he finds that art, not only will he be able to recover all his strength, he will also be able to use both the Great Yin Heaven Creation Art and the Origin Immortal Art at the same time. He only cultivated one supreme art, but he has already stirred up a storm of blood in the martial arts world, causing everyone to pale at the mere mention of it. If he were to cultivate both, no one in the martial arts world would be able to stop him. At that time, the world's sex would truly face a calamity. Ouyang Changheng said, his eyes brimming with concern. The entire battlefield was in chaos, and if the Righteous Alliance did not act now, they would lose the initiative. Don't be in such a rush. This treasury isn't that easy to obtain. Getting in earlier doesn't necessarily mean getting the origin immortal art sooner. Let's wait for now. Song Yuanyi looked forward, his expression grave. Only the virtuous could possess treasures. And as the lord of the Jingqi League, Song Yuanyi was well aware that the more powerful a treasure was, the more dangerous it was. It was not as simple as it seemed. Buzz. As they were speaking, the unaffiliated martial artists in the lead seemed to respond to Song Yuanyi's judgment. 50 to 60 paces from the origin immortal mountain, they vanished. Xikong Yuanjia, Ouyang Changheng, and the others all widened their eyes and paled. Even though they were elders of the Jingqi League, they had not been able to see how those unaffiliated martial artists had vanished. Not only that, but even their auras had disappeared from everyone's perception, as if they had evaporated into thin air. More importantly, those people had vanished exactly the same way as Wang Chong. Charge. The treasure belongs to whoever gets in first. Haha, the origin immortal art, I'm coming. But at this moment, the martial artists in a frenzied trance, fearing that they would fall behind, did not notice what was happening up ahead. And even if they did, they would not care. Buzz. 1, 2, 3, 100, 200, 500 more and more people charged forward. One wave after another, until they were 50 to 60 paces from the origin immortal mountain. In order to be the first to reach the origin immortal mountain and obtain the treasure, many people began to attack the martial artists around them and in front of them. All kinds of stellar energy and hidden weapons flew through the air, creating a chaotic scene. Many people collapsed on the ground before they could even get in. Even the evil path disciples of the Five Ancestor Alliance grimaced at this sight. At this moment, even the Five Ancestor Alliance would be torn to shreds by this crowd. Ah! Suddenly, a scream on the verge of death came from the origin immortal mountain up ahead. At first, it was only one or two, but as the screams grew louder and louder, everyone's hair standing on end. These screams were like a bucket of ice water being poured over them. In a flash, the martial artists who had been rushing forward and fighting each other quieted down, all of them stopping their attacks. Even the disciples at the very front couldn't help but stop, their bodies filled with shock and uncertainty. Careful! There's an ambush inside. An unaffiliated martial artist stopped, his face fraught with unease. These hair-raising screams immediately calmed the crowd down, and they noticed that a large number of martial artists had suddenly vanished. Damn it! I knew that the treasure wouldn't be that easy to get. Everyone's hearts were filled with fear. Although they were all tempted, they were also incomparably fearful. Those martial artists that had charged and had cultivations on par with them, but they had all been killed in such a short time. One could easily imagine how dangerous the traps were. Haha, a bunch of cowardly bandits. The Blackeen ancestor made no attempt to conceal his disdain. Like Song Yuanyi, he had not done anything. But the Blackeen ancestor and the Five Ancestor Alliance had a completely different plan from Song Yuanyi's. Song Yuanyi had predicted the dangers, while the Blackeen ancestor was waiting for these people to scout the path for him. And even if these people obtained the treasure, as long as the Five Ancestor Alliance guarded the exit, whoever obtained the origin immortal art would have to obediently offer it to the Five Ancestor Alliance. Let's go. It's our turn now. The myriad ghost ancestor, Pale Wanchong, raised his robe, and with a single step, he took more than 100 zhang forward. Once everyone stopped, the Five Ancestor Alliance would naturally strike. Buzz. Chapter 14-15. This golden image was vast, and exuded a power that could change the color of the world. The crowd had calmed down, but when they saw this golden light, their blood surged and their eyes reddened. Men died for wealth, and birds died for food. The stimulation of the origin immortal art had made them throw all their fear to the back of their minds. Forget it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. An unaffiliated martial artist shouted as he charged forward with astonishing speed. Bzzz. In a flash of light and a ripple, the martial artist vanished. The rest of the martial artists began to grow restless once more, rushing in the direction of the golden light, and disappearing into the origin immortal mountain. The five ancestor alliances Black Yin Ancestor and Myriad Ghost Ancestor had already charged forward. But when they saw this sight, they grimaced. These damn things! The Black Yin Ancestor's face darkened as he fiercely thrust out a palm. Ah! Screams rang out as the 10-some unaffiliated martial artists at the front were caught off guard and were immediately shattered by the Black Yin Ancestor's stellar energy, their severed limbs raining down on the ground. These martial artists looked terrified as they scattered in all directions. But even more martial artists paid no attention to the Black Yin Ancestor, madly charging forward, vanishing 50 to 60 paces from the Origin Immortal Mountain. Everyone hear my order! Charge into the Origin Immortal Mountain. Anyone who dares to stop us from taking the Origin Immortal Art will die. As more and more martial artists charged into the Origin Immortal Mountain, the Black Yin Ancestor and Myriad Ghost Ancestor could no longer sit still. Yes, the several hundred Five Ancestor Alliance disciples, seething with killing intent, unsheathed their sabers and swords and followed the Black Yin Ancestor and Myriad Ghost Ancestor. Guangting, there's still something strange about this matter. I'll take some people in to investigate. Take half of the people with you, and stand guard outside to provide support at any time. Song Yuanyi suddenly said. His brow was tightly creased as he looked in confusion at the place where the golden light had come from. Although he didn't dare to be careless, whether or not the Origin Immortal Art was real, he had to get to the bottom of it. Hua! Song Yuanyi's eyes flashed as he soared into the air. Like a bolt of lightning, he followed the Black Yin Ancestor and Myriad Ghost Ancestor into the Origin Immortal Mountain. Pass down my order. Set up the sword formation, and provide support at any moment if something unexpected happens. Xie Guangting's sleeves fluttered in the wind. Seeing Song Yuanyi, the Myriad Ghost Ancestor, and the others disappear inside, he quickly came to his senses and made a series of arrangements. However, no one knew that in the distance, a pair of eyes had been silently watching everything. Only now did he slowly retract his gaze. Your Highness, this Origin Immortal Mountain has probably attracted all the experts of the martial arts world of the Central Plains. On a green mountain several li from the Origin Immortal Mountain, a tall and muscular figure turned his head, his expression extremely respectful. Haha, the Central Divine Prefecture is indeed full of talents. There's not a single weakling in the northwest. A middle-aged man with a full beard, long eyebrows, and eyes that resembled dragons spoke with a smile. He was clearly not from the Central Plains, and his robes fluttered loudly in the air. This middle-aged man was dressed in the black robes of the Central Plains, and held a flute in his hand. Its tassels swayed in the wind, exuding a graceful and otherworldly aura. There were countless who had penetrated deep into the Central Plains, but very few of them exuded a noble aura like this bearded middle-aged man. It was obvious at a glance that he was no ordinary individual. If someone from Yuzhou of the Northeast were present, they would definitely recognize him and gasp in shock. This was the illustrious Eastern Turkic king of the northeast of the Tang dynasty, Ashina Bogushidu. This Eastern Turkic king possessed incredible martial arts, and he had foiled more than half of Anong Protector General Zhang Shogui's operations against the Eastern Turks. It was even said that, in order to deal with him, Zhang Shogui had requested a ritual tool from the Holy Emperor, and gathered the generals of his army to create a joint attack formation. Fortunately, Ashina Bogushidu had never been very interested in the affairs of the Eastern Turkic army or the imperial court. Other than when the Eastern Turkic interior was under attack, he was a mysterious dragon whose head and tail were rarely seen. Not even Khagan Osmasai could order him around. But no one had expected this illustrious king of the Eastern Turks to appear in the Great Tang's northwest, the place where the Origin Immortal Art had appeared. Your Highness, that youth is the king of foreign lands of the Tang dynasty. I truly didn't think that we would run into him while searching for the Origin Immortal Art. This Tang dynasty's king of foreign lands is a thorn in the side of Osmasai Khagan and the surrounding kingdoms, and all of them are extremely apprehensive of him. Who could have imagined that he would appear here, instead of in the capital of the Tang dynasty? This fellow is so powerful that he's actually able to contend against Song Yuanyi and Luo Qiyin. This sort of person is truly a great calamity for our Eastern Turks. To Ashina Bagushida's left, the two Eastern Turkic experts stared in shock in the direction of the Origin Immortal Mountain. One battle of Talas and one battle of Khorasan. These two battles had combined to kill nearly 1 million Arab elites, forcing the brave and skilled Azura Kingdom of Arabia to lower its head and submit. There was probably no one in the surrounding kingdoms that didn't know of this king of foreign lands. And there's also that Jingqi League Lord Song Yuani and myriad ghost ancestor Pale Wanchong. Both of them are top-class experts of the present age. Truly, hearing about them is not as good as meeting them in person. The martial arts titans of the Central Plains are far more powerful than the information we have gathered. Fortunately, these sect leaders are not used by the Tang Dynasty imperial court. Otherwise, who knows how many people of our Eastern Turkic Khaganate would have died against this level of power? The other Eastern Turkic expert said, his eyes filled with deep respect as he looked into the distance. In this journey to the northwest, they had all somewhat underestimated the martial artists of the Central Plains, but after witnessing this battle, all of them had been deeply stunned by the strength they had displayed. Haha, so what? No matter how strong Song Yuani is, no matter how strong Pale Wanchong is, no matter how strong that Tang Dynasty's king of foreign lands is, could they compare to our Highness the King of Foreign Lands? The Eastern Turkic expert who had spoken first grinned and turned to Ashina Bagushidu. Ashina Bagushidu stood with his head held high, silently smiling at the crowd. Your Highness, on this trip to the Central Plains, we should capture the King of Foreign Lands and the sect leaders of the Central Plains in one fell swoop, eliminating a calamity for our Eastern Turkic Khaganate. The Eastern Turkic expert who had first spoken bowed and deferentially said, Ha! Emperor Taizong of the Tang Dynasty once said that all the world is in turmoil for profit, and all the world is in turmoil for profit. With profit at the forefront, one can even kill one's parents and brothers, let alone others. There's no need for us to be in such a rush. Let the sects of the Central Plains fight for a while, and when the time is right, we can come out to clean up the mess and reap the rewards. Bagushida's robes flapped in the wind as he spoke. His eyes were deep and his lips curled into a smile. It seemed like everything was under his control. The group stood on the summit and looked into the distance for a few moments before vanishing. Putting aside what was going on outside, there was a flash of light in the Origin Immortal Mountain as Wang Chong descended from the sky. He felt like he had fallen from one world to another, a completely different scene appearing before his eyes. Master! Wang Chong's eyes brightened as he immediately noticed his master, the evil emperor. The evil emperor solemnly waved his hand at the sky, and Wang Chong was immediately pushed to the evil emperor's side. How is it? Are your injuries serious? The evil emperor worriedly asked. As he spoke, he placed a hand on Wang Chong's shoulder, sending an enormous surge of energy into Wang Chong's body to heal his stellar energy and injuries. Not bad. Those two truly were formidable, especially that Song Yuani. He's extremely shrewd and difficult to deal with. He clearly saw through me long ago, but he waited until the very end to attack. As expected of a ruthless and ruthless character. Wang Chong said. Song Yuani's eternal spring mantra was secondary. His shrewdness and intelligence were the most frightening. Wang Chong had used so many methods, even using the Master of Fate, to obtain immunity, but Song Yuani's suspicions of Wang Chong had never been completely dispelled. Song Yuani is an extremely shrewd person, and his methods are outstanding. Moreover, he's extremely suspicious, no less than us Evil Path members. It's just that he never shows it on the surface. I didn't like interacting with him back then, and he knew that he was no match for me, so he always took a detour to avoid me. But although he's cunning, suspicious, and skilled at scheming, his eternal spring mantra is truly formidable. Even though I cultivated the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art, I still couldn't easily deal with him. You're currently heavily injured, and your internal energy has been diverted. It's already quite impressive that you were able to escape from him. The evil emperor sternly said. Wang Chong's eyes widened. He had never imagined that his master would have such a high evaluation of Song Yuani. The eternal spring stellar energy is suited for protracted and head-on battles. You have yet to recover your strength and are no match for him. It's not wise for you to face him head-on for the time being. The evil emperor said. Your disciple understands. Song Yuani truly is a powerful foe. If I hadn't sensed Master's aura in advance, I wouldn't have dared to stay there and calmly exchange blows with him and the Black Yin ancestor. Wang Chong sternly said. Wang Chong was facing Song Yuani, the Black Yin ancestor, and Xie Guangting at the same time. The situation seemed extremely perilous, but to Wang Chong, it was far from that. Before the Origin Immortal Mountain had officially appeared, Wang Chong had already sensed the changes in the air. Most importantly, Wang Chong had suddenly sensed his master's aura and established a connection with him. Chapter 14-17. Right, Master, just what's going on here? I waited in the stone formation on the summit for a very long time, but I never saw any trace of you. Moreover, the Origin Immortal Mountain still hasn't appeared, so how did you get in? Also, where is Senior Zhou? Wang Chong asked. The events of the last few days were a complete blank to him. It's a long story. Your Senior Zhou and I went to investigate and thought that we would return soon, but we ran into Song Yuani and his Zhengqi League experts. Your Senior Zhou's martial arts aren't very high, so I had to protect him and escape with great difficulty. By the time we returned, you were already gone. I guessed that you would also go to the Origin Immortal Mountain, so I brought your Senior Zhou and the village chief here. But both I and Senior Zhou underestimated the power of this place. We had only just entered when we realized that this was an enormous and ancient formation. The formation changed so quickly that I was separated from Senior Zhou and the village chief before I could prepare. This formation is very complicated. Pulling one part will affect the whole thing. Furthermore, it is constantly changing. Village chief and I have been trapped here for a very long time. The only one who can undo this formation is you, Senior Zhou. I've already received word from him that he's using all his strength to break the formation, but I'm afraid that he won't be able to do so in the short term. The evil emperor sternly said. Ah! Wang Chong gasped in shock. Only now did he have the time to take stock of his surroundings. He had been so focused on his master that only now did Wang Chong realize that he was surrounded by a gray haze, making it impossible to see up from down or what was going on outside. This situation was very similar to the Four Symbols Yin-Yang Soul Trap, but much more powerful. Crack! At this moment, the sound of bones cracking could be heard from a short distance away. Wang Chong turned his head and saw that a seated skeleton, dressed in the robes of a sect disciple, had fallen to the ground. This person's body had been completely separated, leaving only a layer of skin covering the skeleton, and from his expression, it seemed that he had experienced an extremely painful struggle before his death. Wang Chong glanced around and saw that there were more than 10 skeletons like this one. These are all people from the various sects who accidentally entered the Origin Immortal Mountain. Even until their deaths, they were unable to leave this place. A familiar voice sounded by his ear. The evil emperor suddenly spoke. It was here when I came. It looks like this place has been opened more than once or twice. Wang Chong didn't say anything, but his heart instantly sank. If that's the case, isn't this a trap? If the Origin Immortal Mountain appeared on its own, there would be no need for a treasure map. Someone of the Origin Immortal Lord status would never have made such a mistake. Wang Chong said. Your Senior Zhou has also mentioned this point, but this matter cannot be concluded for the time being. This formation is extremely ancient, and powerful formations have long since been lost. No person or faction can lay down such a powerful formation. This means that this formation was definitely laid down by the Origin Immortal Lord. Even if it isn't the real treasure, it must be related to the treasure in some way. It can't be a simple trap. Just like Wang Chong, the evil emperor carefully examined his surroundings. He had been here for a very long time, and had pondered many things related to the Origin Immortal Palace. He had also thought about what Wang Chong was thinking. Buzz! At this moment, the earth trembled and the sky shook. The surrounding space suddenly trembled violently. Before Wang Chong could react, Wang Chong felt like the space around him had been grabbed by an invisible hand and then flung about. Wang Chong instantly paled. The formation has changed. This thought flitted through Wang Chong's mind. Wang Chong had learned about formations from Elder Fong and Elder Du, so he knew that formations were divided into acquired and pre-celestial formations. The so-called acquired formations were those that would remain motionless after being set up. On the other hand, the innate formations were just like the one before him. The range of the formation was huge, and once one entered it, one's position would constantly change. Most importantly, most of these innate formations were extremely vicious and dangerous. Once one entered one, it was rare for one to come out alive. You should have already noticed that this formation changes every hour, and its position isn't static. Moreover, based on what your senior Zhou said, there should be 8 elements and 8 transformations. One moment, your position might be safe, but the next, it might be filled with danger. Fortunately, our current location is still safe for at least the next 24 hours. There won't be any problems for the time being. This is also the reason why I brought you here. Master, how do you know all this? A strange look appeared on Wang Chong's face. Although his master was a formidable martial artist, he didn't have any particular skill in formations. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have been able to speak of this. Instead, it seemed more like, of course I don't know about this. It was your senior Zhou who told me. He was also trapped in a formation gate, but he understands how formations change, so he's much safer than we are. Just 6 hours ago, he was pushed by the formation and appeared not far from me. He told me all this, and based on what he said, in around 6 hours, the formation will change, and his position will coincide with ours. The evil emperor explained, his voice extremely calm. Wang Chong immediately quieted down. The formation elder was a grandmaster of formations, and he was probably the most formidable formation grandmaster in existence. If he thought that everyone would gather together after 6 hours, then he shouldn't be wrong. The more ancient a formation, the more dangerous it is. Carelessly moving about in a place like this is likely to trigger a chain reaction that will lead us to our deaths. I should wait until I meet up with Senior Zhou before making any other plans. Wang Chong said to himself. While Wang Chong was thinking, he suddenly heard a series of wretched howls coming from nearby, one after the other, sounding extremely miserable. Wang Chong's face paled as he stood up. Save me. Ah, my face. What is this place? Treasures. I want treasures. Ah. The howl was short and short, like the wails of ghosts and the howls of wolves, making one's hair stand on end. With a thought, Wang Chong charged in the direction of the howl. But after a few steps, the howl came to a sudden stop, and the surroundings once more fell eerily silent. A few moments later, however, another shrill howl rang out. But this time, the source of the howl was erratic and elusive. But no matter which one it was enough to strike fear into one's heart. He's probably dead. The evil emperor's eyes were closed, his head slightly raised as he indifferently said, "This formation is filled with many dangers. There are many dangers in this formation. My skills are not strong enough, but I was too greedy and rushed in. It's not surprising that I ended up like this." The evil emperor's expression was cold, and he felt no pity for these martial artists from the martial arts world who had charged into the formation. As the saying went, one's virtue does not match one's position. Despite their meager strength, they still coveted the world's #1 art. The evil emperor had never had a good impression of such people. "Chonger, get ready. Our test is coming," the evil emperor suddenly said. Wang Chong was taken aback at first, but he quickly sensed something and understood what was going on. He focused his mind. Rumble. A few moments later, the space around Wang Chong's group began to tremble once more. But this time, it was different. Boom! Wang Chong felt like the entire space was fiercely shaking, as if a high-speed train had struck something. Swish! Before Wang Chong could react, a dark green mist began to surge in from all directions. Wherever the dark green smoke passed, the space let out a sizzling sound of decay. "It's poisonous." Wang Chong's heart chilled as he immediately understood what was going on. He immediately spread out the stellar energy in his body, enveloping an area several feet around him. At almost the same time, the evil emperor's body trembled, as he also released a steely stellar energy to protect his body. Swish! Chi! In just a short moment, the dark green poisonous smoke immediately surged over, filled the sky, and enveloped the pair of master and disciple. The poisonous mist surged like acid, but all of it was blocked by the incredibly dense stellar energy around Wang Chong and the evil emperor. At the evil emperor's level of strength, he was practically immune to all poisons. Unless it was an extremely powerful poison, it was impossible to poison him. Ah! My eyes! My eyes! But while Wang Chong and disciple were focused on defending, a scream suddenly rang out, and several figures began to stumble out of the poisonous mist toward them. Ignore them. The hearts of men are sinister. Once they enter this place, they are responsible for their own lives. If they have to blame someone, they can only blame themselves. The evil emperor's eyes were closed, his expression cold and stiff, and he did not even raise his head as he spoke. He had been betrayed by his disciple, attacked by the righteous and evil sects, and sent tens of thousands of people to capture him. The evil emperor's heart had softened a great deal because of Wang Chong and his sister. For Wang Chong's sake, he had even traveled 1,000 li to participate in the Battle of Talas and help the Tang dynasty deal with the Arabs. But that was only for the people of the imperial court. The evil emperor's attitude toward these people was completely different. No one understood more than him just how crafty and treacherous the people of the sects could be. In the sects, if they weren't scheming against each other, then they were scheming against each other. They were not worthy of trust. Ah! The screams continued, the pain in their voices like they were being cut by knives. Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh as he looked at those figures that had charged over and were writhing on the ground. How could he not understand his master's thoughts? In truth, from the moment he had set foot in the northwest, Wang Chong had sensed that his master's personality had subtly changed. Chapter 14:18. Forget it. I can't just stand by and watch them die, Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he stood up. Boom! Several bursts of stellar energy surged out in quick succession like a tidal wave, quickly sweeping up those wailing martial artists and making them fall to the ground. These martial artists covered their eyes, their bodies still twitching. Swallow it. Wang Chong took a pill from his bosom and slapped it into the mouth of a martial artist. At the same time, his stellar energy surged into the bodies of these martial artists. In the next moment, dark green smoke immediately seeped out of their pores and acupoints. Sit cross-legged and focus on circulating your energy, Wang Chong sternly said. Knowing that Wang Chong had no ill intentions, and that they were surrounded by danger, these unaffiliated martial artists did not dare to be careless. They immediately sat down cross-legged and began to circulate their energy. Ha! The demonic emperor old man couldn't help but sigh. Fine. With a thought, the stellar energy around the evil emperor's body surged as if it had a life of its own. It dragged the unaffiliated martial artists into his stellar energy, and with a boom, expelled the poison from their bodies. Although he had always held a grudge against the people of the martial arts sects, and was unwilling to pay them too much attention, but in the end, the evil emperor could not dissuade his disciple. Wang Chong was far too soft-hearted. Whether it was for the sake of the people of the southwest, when he had single-handedly resisted Mengshi Zhao and Uzan, when he had led an army against the much stronger Arabs for the sake of the Tang dynasty, or when he had been misunderstood by the people of the Tang dynasty in every possible way, and yet he had never given up or struck back. Wang Chong's personality was completely unlike that of his master. But this was precisely what the evil emperor liked about his disciple. In the 2 years they had been together, the evil emperor had not only failed to change his disciple, but had been greatly changed by him. With Wang Chong and the evil emperor taking action, the breathing of these martial artists quickly stabilized. Thank you, master. Wang Chong looked at his master, the evil emperor, who was standing not too far away, with a look of shame in his eyes. All right. They were just a few ants. Saving them was as easy as lifting a hand. Who told you to be my disciple? The evil emperor waved his hand. Wang Chong laughed when he heard that. He knew that his master was only stubborn on the surface, but he wasn't too evil in his heart. Even if he wasn't present, his master would still have made a move. Time passed slowly. Wang Chong's eyes flashed as he suddenly sensed something. Looks like this poison has a time limit. It will slowly dissipate after a period of time. As far as Wang Chong could see, the green poisonous fog that filled the surroundings was slowly thinning and becoming fainter and fainter. In just a few moments they were all gone. Cough cough. At that moment, a series of coughs could be heard. The martial artists who were protected by Wang Chong and the evil emperor in their earth energy finally came to their senses and slowly stopped their cultivation. Their faces were a little pale, but they were fine. Suddenly, one of the martial artists opened his eyes and saw the evil emperor standing not too far away. As if he had seen a snake or scorpion, he pushed himself against the ground and stumbled backward in fear. The evil emperor. The other martial artists were jolted awake by this person's voice. They opened their eyes and looked at the evil emperor coldly. The evil emperor stood like a towering mountain. The martial artists turned pale and fearful as they fled, looking warily at the evil emperor. In the world of sex, the evil emperor Zhang Wenfu's infamy was known to everyone, especially just a moment ago, when they had just seen the illusion he had cast in the air. Now that they saw the real person with their own eyes, how could they not be terrified? Let's go. One of the martial artists crawled to his feet and immediately charged out like a bolt of lightning, disappearing without a trace. Wang Chong did nothing to stop him, but his eyes turned cold. At almost the same time, a hint of killing intent flashed through the evil emperor's eyes. He clenched his fist and then slowly loosened it. Damn it! Why did we run into this demon? A few unaffiliated warriors turned pale, their bodies trembling as they also rushed out. Wang Chong's eyes turned even colder at this sight. This massive formation was fraught with danger, and if everything went as expected, these people were doomed. But this time, Wang Chong had no intention of helping them. One had to choose their own path, and Wang Chong had already saved them once. He would not do it a second time. In just a moment, a series of screams could be heard from afar, and then there was no more sound. Inside the array door, a few cultivators who had not charged out had trembling expressions, as if they had understood something. Wang Chong ignored them this time. Now that they were safe, what came next was more important. In a little more than 2 hours, Senior Zhou, the formation elder, should appear. Wang Chong said to himself. Buzz. A moment later, Wang Chong opened his eyes and entered the world of the origin of energy. In a flash, the world around him transformed into a dazzling world of multicolored energy that appeared before Wang Chong's eyes. What a complicated world of energy! From the origin of energy, he could tell that this formation was composed of thousands of different kinds of energy. When Wang Chong looked up at this formation, he felt like an ant looking up at a majestic mountain, and he couldn't help but feel insignificant. Not only that, when Wang Chong looked up at the sky and tried to observe the other parts of the origin of energy, he could clearly sense some invisible energy interfering with his vision. As a result, the range of his vision in the world of the origin of energy had clearly shrunk. This should be the effect of the seals around the origin immortal mountain. Although his vision in the world of the origin of energy could not be hindered by ordinary obstructions, the energy here could block out energy, affecting Wang Chong's vision in the world of the origin of energy. Wang Chong could sense that the entire origin immortal mountain was shrouded in a dome of energy. You should have already seen it, right? This spirit array was not just a spirit array, it was also an energy spirit array. Senior Zhou once mentioned that this place was the great universe layout. It seems that a significant portion of the energy that disappeared has gathered here. As the formation changes, so does the energy. Each formation gate is a different kind of energy, and based on the current situation, there are at least 1,000 of them. If we can't figure out the pattern, it will be very difficult for us to leave. At this moment, a familiar voice rang out in his ear. Master. Wang Chong immediately noticed his master by the side. From the perspective of the origin of energy, the energy in his master's body was milky white and dense, seemingly more powerful than any other source of energy. When Wang Chong looked over, he immediately saw his master's eyes. Unlike the normal eye, in the world of the origin of energy, his master's eyes were a strange kind of golden energy. This golden energy gave Wang Chong an extremely high-level feeling, but for some reason, Wang Chong felt like he had seen it somewhere before, that it was very familiar. Buzz! A moment later, Wang Chong finally remembered where he had sensed this special golden energy before. Master you! Wang Chong's eyes widened as he finally remembered. At the Battle of Talas, when Arab war god Qutayba had just broken into the subtle realm, this golden energy had also appeared in his body. This was the subtle realm, a high-level energy that originated from the depths of space-time. Could it be that during this period of time, Master had made a new advancement in the path of martial arts, and had already touched upon the minute subtlety realm? At that moment, Wang Chong was both surprised and delighted. On the other side, the demonic emperor old man seemed to understand what Wang Chong was thinking, and he gave a slight nod and a smile. Wonderful! Upon receiving his master's confirmation, Wang Chong clenched his fists in excitement. Your master truly did gain some insights from my last battle with that barbarian war god. Once I cure your cultivation defect, your master will tell you all about it. In your current condition, this level of energy is not necessarily a good thing, the evil emperor said. The evil emperor was most worried about this disciple of his. Of all his disciples, the only one who could truly inherit his legacy and satisfy him the most was Wang Chong. The primary reason he had come to the northwest this time was for Wang Chong. As for himself, he was no longer that important. Your disciple understands. Wang Chong nodded. He currently had more than 1,000 types of energy in his body. If he added the energy of the subtle realm, the energy in his body might go berserk, which would be a disaster. Get ready. The formation is about to change again, the evil emperor suddenly said. Rumble. The formation is about to change again. Rumble. A few moments later, the formation began to move once more. A dangerous aura washed over him, and Wang Chong immediately expanded the stellar energy in his body to its maximum. But as he glanced at the unaffiliated martial artists around him, Wang Chong hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he still decided to bring them into his stellar energy protection. Time slowly passed, and the formation around the Origin Immortal Mountain would occasionally erupt with screams. Countless people had died to this ancient formation, but just as the formation elder had said, the formation gate he and his master were in wasn't very dangerous. At the very least, it wasn't very dangerous for someone of his and his master's strength. Wang Chong would occasionally enter the world of energy to work with his master in an attempt to understand the rules governing the operation of this ancient formation. In addition, Wang Chong would also use his psychic energy to investigate, but the results were not very good. This formation was far more complex than he had imagined. Although Wang Chong had learned a thing or two from it, he was still far from being able to comprehend the ancient formation laid down by the Origin Immortal Lord. It seems like I'll have to wait for Senior Zhou to appear. Chapter 1420. After thinking for a few moments, Wang Chong took out a book from his bosom. It was none other than the void movement technique that he had obtained from the men in black. Wang Chong had skimmed through it before, but he had been pressed for time and hadn't been able to finish reading it. His surroundings were quiet, and there was even some turbulence in the air. Other than when the formation shifted, this place was relatively safe. With nothing else to do, before the formation elder arrived, Wang Chong lowered his head and began to cultivate the void movement technique. The unaffiliated martial artists had kept their distance while the surroundings were quiet, and his master was still trying to find the rules of the formation in the world of energy. For a moment, no one noticed Wang Chong and the void movement technique in his hands. Even if someone did, they would only glance at it and then quickly leave, not daring to look at it for too long. The void is limited, but the mind is boundless. When the mind is one can be like a butcher dismembering an ox, able to move with ease. This is the void movement technique. Use the mind to control the mind. Use the mind to control the body. Use the body to control the void, and there is nothing that cannot be seen. This is why it is called a movement technique, not a movement technique. As Wang Chong continued to read, he became completely immersed in the void movement technique. These men in black were sinister, vicious, and shrouded in mystery. But even Wang Chong had to admit that their martial arts were extremely profound, far more powerful than the majority of martial artists in the present era could come into contact with. Wang Chong was quickly immersed in the void movement technique and began to cultivate according to the mnemonic within. This void movement technique was a movement technique and cultivation technique, and it had little to do with internal energy. It had very little effect on the current situation in Wang Chong's body, and even if he cultivated the void movement technique, it would not worsen the state of cultivation defect in Wang Chong's body. This was also why Wang Chong had chosen to cultivate this martial art. Time slowly passed, and Wang Chong had almost completely grasped the mysteries of the void movement technique. After all, as a peak great general, it was much easier for Wang Chong to cultivate the void movement technique. He's here. Just as Wang Chong was concentrating on his cultivation, his master, the evil emperor's voice suddenly rang in his ears. Wang Chong's heart trembled. He raised his head and saw that the sky was dark. Unknowingly, several hours had passed and even the sky was getting dark. Although it was impossible to determine the direction within this huge and complicated formation, one could still roughly distinguish day and night based on the color of the sky. Hung long long. In just a few breaths' time, the surrounding space began to tremble again. Moreover, under the push of the massive formation, the space began to move on its own. Zhang Wenfu, stinking brat, where are you? At that moment, a voice suddenly rang out. At the same time, diagonally to his left, Wang Chong sensed a familiar aura. Wang! There was a flash of light, and a dwarf-like old man wearing a Taoist robe suddenly emerged from the gray mist. Senior Zhou. Upon seeing the formation elder, Wang Chong immediately stood up. At the same time, Wang Chong's master, the evil emperor, strode over, heartily laughing as he walked. Old scoundrel! I've been waiting for you for several hours. You're finally here. As the evil emperor spoke, he hugged the formation elder tightly. Release me, you old thing. I'm about to be strangled to death by you. The formation elder was furious and anxious, his face red from the evil emperor's grip. As he roared, he kicked at the evil emperor's knee. As it turned out, the evil emperor's hug had lifted the formation elder's feet off the ground and left him suspended in the air. The demonic emperor old man laughed heartily before releasing his hands. The formation elder glared at the evil emperor, and then he turned to Wang Chong. Ha, kid, you even dared to toy with Song Yuani and Luo Qiyin. You've got guts. As expected of the demonic emperor's true disciple, you've not disgraced your master's reputation. This old man truly underestimated you. Just based on your courage, this old man has to look up to you. The formation elder spoke in an old and wise manner, saying that this child was worth teaching. Wang Chong didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this sight. Yes, this junior accepts. Teach. Yes. After exchanging pleasantries, the three quickly calmed down and began to discuss their current predicament. Old scoundrel, is there anything we can do? Judging from the current situation, this array formation had already trapped at least 700 to 800 people. Moreover, the longer they stayed here, the stronger the power of the array formation would become. I've already tried many times, but I can't get out of here. The evil emperor gazed at the gray and hazy world in front of him. The speaker was unintentional, but the unaffiliated martial artists in the corner, who had been saved, felt worried when they heard these words. Everyone in the world knew of the evil emperor's strength. If not even he could leave this formation, it was even more impossible for them to do so. This matter isn't as simple as you think. The formation elder's expression was solemn, a hint of worry in the depths of his eyes. The Origin Immortal Lord's mastery of formations is far greater than I imagined. This formation has a total of 1,024 formation gates and 12,888 variations, and each variation is different at every moment. Just calculating the variations of this formation is extremely complicated, and I could only calculate a portion of it, allowing me to predict that we would meet in 6 hours. However, this is far from enough to find a way to leave. Why leave? Why not enter the Origin Immortal Mountain? Don't any of you want the Origin Immortal Art? Just at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. It was an idol cultivator hiding in the corner. The moment he said it, he realized that he had been too excited. Daring to speak in front of the demonic emperor was suicidal. You fools, do you still not understand? There's no Origin Immortal Mountain here. The formation elder suddenly turned his head, a look of disdain on his face. Impossible. Everyone saw the Origin Immortal Mountain's enormous size. The Origin Immortal Art is the world's #1 art, and such a treasure must be surrounded by countless dangers. Obtaining a treasure without experiencing any danger is far too easy. That's right. The Origin Immortal Mountain must be in the depths of this formation. As long as we can pass through this formation, we'll definitely reach the Origin Immortal Mountain. The unaffiliated martial artist said, their desire for the world's #1 art immediately suppressing their fear of the demonic emperor's group. Bah, the depths of the formation? What a bunch of fools. Based on the area of this formation, if the Origin Immortal Mountain really is in the depths of this formation, then the mountain must only be 1 zhang tall. The formation elder sneered. Buzz! The unaffiliated martial artists shuddered in shock at the formation elder's words. It was naturally impossible for the Origin Immortal Mountain to be 10 feet tall. There had to be a problem somewhere. For a moment all was silent. Wang Chong silently stood on the side, a pensive look in his eyes. He had been in the formation for several hours now, and he had used various methods to observe the surroundings. There was no Origin Immortal Mountain here. Wang Chong had long ago suspected this, but it was only after the formation elder had appeared that someone had formally exposed it. How could this be? Everyone saw the Origin Immortal Mountain. It's so real that it can't be fake. I don't believe you. I won't believe you. An unaffiliated martial artist said, his eyes wide as he glared at the formation elder. As if agitated, a deep stubbornness appeared on his face. For the sake of this world's #1 art, he had traveled a great distance, passed through many obstacles, encountered many pursuers, and clashed with many of the martial artists gathered here. After entering the formation, he was also corroded by the poisonous fog, and his vital parts were stabbed by others. However, he persevered through all of it, all for the sake of obtaining the world's #1 mystical art, and one day, he would cultivate to become the world's #1 expert. But now that the formation elder said that it was all fake, he could not accept it. I don't believe you, you swindlers. This unaffiliated cultivator looked excited, as if he had fallen into a trance. Before anyone could react, he suddenly rushed into the gray fog in front of him. Seeing this scene, the other martial artists could not help but cry out. However, in just a short while, he had already disappeared without a trace. Blinded by greed, you're seeking death. The formation elder coldly snorted and quickly turned his head. On the other side, Wang Chong and the evil emperor said nothing. They had chosen their own path, and the formation elder had already warned them that if they insisted on charging into those dangerous areas, no one could stop them. Let's return to the formation. I've been calculating for several hours, trying to deduce the pattern of this array formation's movements. Even if I've guessed just a little bit correctly, I've failed every time. Every time, there would be some inexplicable deviation. I have a feeling that this array formation is being driven by someone. The formation elder said. What? Wang Chong and the evil emperor both trembled in shock. How could this be? Wang Chong frowned, a pensive look in his eyes. Such a massive formation shouldn't have been controlled by a human. At the very least, they could accept the conclusion that this formation had been laid down by the Origin Immortal Lord several hundred years ago, perhaps even longer. But if everything was as the formation elder said, then the nature of the matter was completely different. Old scoundrel, you're not talking nonsense, are you? The demonic emperor old man said, his expression grim. I also hope that's the case, but I've calculated at least 300 or 400 times, and each time, I feel like something's wrong. I hope that I'm just overthinking things. The formation elder laughed and cried. Senior Zhou, I've dabbled in some things related to formations in the past. Why don't you teach me as well? I'll also help you do some divination. Perhaps it will be of some help. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.